Hi guys, I'm going to quickly give some advice up top in case anyone is going to go through what I went through and they don't necessarily have time or want to listen to my probably fairly long and I guess if you're not me, potentially fairly unremarkable story. So a few key things I would recommend. One is obvious, but choose the driving school really well. Can't be overstated really, and I felt that I was doing this. I felt that I chose, to the best of my abilities, but in hindsight, I wish I'd paid a lot more attention there because that is the most important thing by far, is that you have a good school, particularly if you're learning from scratch. If you already have learned to drive in a different country, it might be a bit less important, but it is still very, very important. The second thing is don't try to rush it. Don't try to go through this too quickly because I did that. I thought I was going to be finished almost a year ago, and needless to say, I wasn't. I finished today. I finally passed today, and all I did was make it take longer. With that pressure, with that rushing, with that trying to do it quickly, trying not to spend too much on it, I've probably cost myself a hell of a lot more money, a hell of a lot of stress, and probably at least 6 months of extra time going through all of this. I mean, I really made things a lot worse for myself in that regard. The next thing would be, if you're like me and you're learning from scratch, I would highly recommend getting yourself a driving wheel. I have one here. I can't show you. I can't move. Well, I can move my camera, but I'm not going to. But I have a Logitech G920 wheel. I think it's the G920, maybe the G29. Both very good. Some of them are for PlayStation, some are for Xbox. This one is for I think everything. I think Xbox and PC. I use it on my PC. And it's amazing. It has pedals, it has feedback, it feels almost like a real car. Certainly if you're like me, I had no understanding of how cars worked at the beginning of all this. I'm not a car person, never paid any attention, had any interest in cars. So for me, it was always weird. I always felt weird using the gears, driving and everything, particularly because, as I'll get onto, I learned in a very stressful environment and situation. I learned in very stressful circumstances, and I wish I'd got the wheel earlier. If I'd gotten the wheel before I even began, it would have been so much easier. Some people say the wheels don't help. I disagree. I think, it doesn't teach you really how to be in traffic, and it's not the same thing, but it really gives you a good idea, in my opinion, of how cars work, and it makes that part of it second nature so that all your attention can just be focused on the road and everything around you in real life. The game, I used a few games. At first I used Euro Truck Simulator with some car mods, but the mods are not very good. The cars don't feel realistic. It's kind of fun. It's quite a fun game. I wish the cars felt more realistic. I wish they would make a car version because the map is amazing. I can even drive around the area I used to live in, which is a small town, but they have it on there. And the map is huge. The game's quite cool, but the physics are just bad really for a car. So there's that. There's this taxi one, which I was really looking forward to. I think they've updated it recently and made it better, but when I played it, you couldn't drive manual. It was essentially impossible to drive manual. If you slowed down even a little bit, the car stalled, and it was just ridiculous. So as of my last attempt, that game was not helpful at all. Shame, because it seemed cool. I think they might have updated it literally a week ago, so yeah, maybe. But the one that was really incredibly useful was BeamMG. Really good game. If you have it set up with the wheel, it's so realistic. You can download different scenarios and maps. There's an Italy one, which is quite good. There's a Poland one, which probably was the most useful for me. It's like a city in Poland. The Italy one is really useful as well. And the Italy one is quite fun to drive around. There's lots of different sections. And if you get that set up nicely, it will cost you, I spent about €200 on the wheel, and I bought it secondhand, so I'll sell it for €200 thereabouts. So I won't even. It's essentially like I've borrowed it for free. So that isn't an outlay. That costs essentially nothing if you buy it secondhand, and it will in many cases, if you're anything like me, it will save you a lot of money. Like, oh man, it hurts to think how much money and time I could have saved if I bought this. And it was really fun. I used to just put it on at night. I would come in here and just drive for an hour or so, listen to some Spanish podcasts or whatever, get a bit of listening practice, drive around with the wheel. It became quite nice, quite a fun, relaxing routine, and it made me a lot more comfortable with driving. So yeah, definitely that. The last one is, and this paid off for me today, big time. If you're in the exam and you think you've made a mistake, you think you've made a mistake, but you think that you failed the exam. Like, you're halfway through the exam or something happens, or you just haven't been performing well generally, and you're thinking, I've failed, I'm not going to pass the exam. You may well be wrong. Don't give up. Just drive. Also, it's good practice anyway, right? Drive as well as you can regardless. Like, for the rest of the exam, pretend it's no different. Don't think of it as any different. Just continue, and you never know. You really, really don't know. The mistakes might not have been as big as you thought, and yeah, just that is one thing that's really important. Like, I mean, if you're suspended in the exam, like if, for example, you don't notice a pedestrian or you drive through a red light or a stop sign or something, you will know, like, because the exam, your instructor will hit the like, they have their own pedals and it makes a really loud sound. And that happened to me once, and that's it, so that's, whatever. Even then, you should continue, I think, just driving as well as you can, because it's practice, and it's practice in a stressful situation. If you've just found out you failed, you're kind of stressed out. It's good to practice. But yeah, definitely, if there's any doubt, then continue believing that you might pass. So yeah, on to my story with all of this, I guess. I'm still a bit right now. I feel very nervous. I feel very I guess really I feel stressed because I'm 99.9% sure I passed. They told me I had, and it was fairly clear there's the tiniest possibility there was some sort of translation error, but I'm sure there wasn't. I guess there's a possibility he got his maths wrong and didn't add up the errors, and he's going to change his mind, or he did get a bit annoyed with me at the end after the exam about something. So I know that I've passed, but I haven't seen it yet. It hasn't been confirmed on the website, and I'm just waiting for it to be confirmed. You have to wait, and the results appear later that day or maybe the next day. So I still feel a little bit like, I guess partially, I can't believe it. I can't believe that I've actually passed. I can't. It's really hard for me to accept, because it's been such a big thing that I never expected it to be, and it was so much more difficult than I expected it to be. And to me, honestly, as well, that's been a bit embarrassing, because I'm not generally I'm not a soft person, I've been through a fair amount in life, and a lot of things I think I can take pretty well, take bad things quite easily, take things on the chin. So I felt a lot of the time throughout this process a bit embarrassed about how much it was affecting me, and embarrassed about how long it took me to pass. And it's been things that I guess people would think are much worse have happened to me during this time. But for me, I would say this has been the worst thing I've been through. Well, my dog got very badly injured. That was worse. But aside from that, yeah, it's been one of the most difficult things I've had to deal with. And I think part of that is probably just my personality, because probably I'm a bit of a control freak, and in this situation I haven't had much control. But there's the financial aspect, all sorts of other stuff. I'll get into all of it anyway. But yeah, it's been huge, and I'm still in absolute disbelief to have passed. If I'm honest, I don't feel like I've passed. I don't feel I'm not really in a celebratory mood. I'm telling myself I am, and I'm like, yes, I've passed, and I am celebrating it. But in my heart, it's hard to feel that. It's really hard to feel that, because it's been over a year now of doing this, over a year, man. A long time. So yeah, I'll go through the process from the beginning, basically. Hang on one sec. All right. So so been living in Spain for a few years. Never considered driving before, and then I came into like a couple of grand, and I thought I could maybe invest this, or I could use it for stuff, or I could just like kind of keep it, just fucking spend it or whatever, or whatever. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to hold on to this money forever. So the best thing would be if when the money is gone, I know that like I really got something out of it, and that it was, I didn't want to look back and think, God, all that money's gone and I have nothing to show for it. I thought the most important thing is I get something of value out of this money, because I don't, it was the first time I'd ever had that much money. I had like a few grand, and it was like the first time I'd ever had more than like £500 to my name, literally. And I'm 32, like, so it was a bit ridiculous really, but I've never had money. I've always lived paycheck to paycheck, basically. Yeah, so I had this money, and I was like, right, I think I'm going to learn to drive, and then if I've got a car, I can also, on top of my current job, I can do other jobs, and also I can drive our dog to places, and I can do, like, we can do day trips and go to fun places and stuff. We can go to like places that where there's no public transport, and also at that time we were fairly adamant about moving to the Czech Republic. I'm not really sure about that anymore, because I really love living in Spain, and I just love Spain. But at that time we were planning on moving fairly imminently for various reasons, and I thought, well, if we're going to move with the dog, have to have a car. There's no other way of doing it. And also, my mum was ill, and at the time she was not that ill, but she was ill, and I really wanted her to meet the dog, and I didn't want her to have to come here. And they go to France a lot, my parents, so I thought, well, if I learn to drive, I can drive with the dog and my girlfriend, and we can drive and go and see them, and they don't have to come to us. And I thought it'd be the only way maybe that she might be able to see the dog, and I thought like we could do a long stay there, we could stay for a few weeks, and it'd be really nice for her to meet the dog, because she's never met her, and the dog is a big part of our lives and everything. And so initially I really wanted to get it done really quickly, and I was really hoping that I could see my mum that Christmas, because they were going to be in France for Christmas. And so I felt an undue level of pressure, because in hindsight it wasn't that bad, like I didn't need it that urgently, but in my mind I felt that way. So I started doing the studying for the theory, and for me this was weird, because I never, at school, I don't remember honestly I don't remember revising, like at school I don't remember revising, like even I remember once in a while I would look at the book and just be like, fuck off, I just put it down and be like, I'm not doing this. And like it showed. I mean, I got through school just about, but like, I didn't get good grades. I did okay in my A-levels. They're pretty easy really, aren't they, the A-levels? Like, it's easy enough to pass, basically. I didn't get good grades, but I did alright, whatever, like C's and B's and stuff. And you can just make stuff up, actually. You can literally just make stuff up in your exams. I did that in the RE exam. I made up loads of quotes. I made up loads of quotes from like religious texts, and they don't fucking know. Your RE examiner has not read all of the religious texts, and even if they have, they don't remember them that well, so it's fine. Yeah. So anyway, why was I talking about that? Yeah, so to me it was very alien. I was trying to study for this, and I was like, man, this is like, I'm a bit I, I don't know, inept at that, I guess. Like, I'm good at focusing on things I'm interested in and care about, but absolutely zero interest in this really. And I was, trying to study from this book I had, this ebook I got online, and found that difficult. So what I started doing instead, there's this website called Practica Test, and it's like practicatest.com. It's I think it's the best site if you're going to get your theory in Spain. And you can get the app as well. And basically, I just kept doing the tests over and over again until I kind of knew all the answers. And this was a bad way to learn the theory because I didn't really learn it. I learned the answers. I didn't really learn the information. I didn't really learn why is that the answer. I just built the habit of going, oh, I know this question is that one, and not really thinking about it, which is a bad way to learn anything. Some people learn languages like that, and you can sense, they know the phrases, but they don't really know what the phrases mean, and they don't really understand the language. They just know how to use the phrases, and it's like an artificial version of speaking the language. So I did that, got me through the theory, and it's kind of annoying. You have to, for example, I started in Valencia, and it doesn't matter where you live in the province of Valencia, you have to do everything in the city. Not always at the most convenient locations either. And some people live hours away where there's no public transport. Like for some people it's a huge pain in the arse to even get there. And it was a bit annoying. I mean, I had to go there just to sign up. I had to go to the city. I had to book an appointment online, go to the city, sign up with all my documents. Then I don't remember exactly. I think I had to go and wait for them to... Oh, no, they gave me the appointment. No, and from what I remember, yeah, they give you the appointment and that's it. You go there on the day, you bring your stuff, not on the day. You go there beforehand. You bring your stuff, you bring your passport and stuff. They give you an appointment and they just go, this is your appointment. You don't get to choose, you don't get to change it, you don't get, whatever. They're like, just this is it or you've missed it. So they gave me an appointment to come back, and I was living outside the city. So it was quite a long journey, like to travel there. I had to keep getting the train and stuff, and then get the tube, and then whatever. It was a bit annoying. And of course, like with the whole experience, it's something I've had to put into perspective a lot and remember, like, as much as this is really annoying for me, it is helpful in a way, and I think just good to remember that there are people who literally have to walk like hours to get water, or people who just like don't have electricity and stuff, so and even just lesser versions of that, even in some places, like paperwork and formalities are way more inconvenient. And people I've spoken to who have jobs where they have to get the bus for 2 hours there and back, and it's not even a good job, and they work for like 10 hours and then they travel, they don't even have time to eat dinner and stuff. So in the grand scheme of things, yeah, it's a lot more annoying than I would have liked it to have been. And I think like you can expect a bit more, like from, as a citizen, like I do think it's fair enough to expect things to be done in a way that's convenient and catered to the needs of the public, because ultimately we pay taxes, and, the taxes here are quite high, and in Europe in general, like, it's fair enough to have an expectation when you're sort of paying for something, that it's a bit more convenient. So it was a bit already like a little bit irritating, but whatever. Then went for the theory, and yeah, that was in a slightly annoying location, and you have to go in the morning. You can't change that. I made the mistake of complaining about this on one of the local Facebook groups. Oh God. I found this I don't know why I was so uncomfortable about this whole incident, but I posted about it. I was just sort of bitching and like, whatever. It was a pointless part. I don't know why I bothered writing it, but I was just sort of blown off steam because I thought, I'm just complaining about like the local government effectively. I'm not complaining about the people. I'm not complaining about the place. I'm not really saying anything other than this is a bit annoying, and assumed people might just think, yeah, kind of annoying, a lot of stuff, same way I would complain in England, same way I would, whatever. It's just, but there's kind of a stigma on the expat groups around complaining about the place, which is there's a very odd standard there. I get the general gist. Like, if someone's gonna move somewhere and be like, this is shit, then like, yeah, just fuck off. Like, really, like, why are you here? I agree with that sentiment. And some of the bitching and complaining is really annoying and stupid. But to be honest, complaining about like the council or something the government does or something that happens to your taxes, like, you're not complaining about the country. You're complaining in the same way that the locals do. You know, at what point do you have permission to, it's like, you know, if someone steals your bike, you're not allowed to complain because it happened in a country that you're a foreigner in. It doesn't really make much sense. You're not complaining about the people. You're not complaining about the customs. You're complaining about, you know, a service that's been poor, basically. So, but anyway, yeah, there's kind of a stigma around that. And people went mental at me. It was huge. And I wasn't expecting it at all because I didn't really put much thought into it. I had a massive, I got really into it with loads of people and like took it way too much to heart, and I started arguing with people and going back and forth for a really long time and getting into like really big arguments with people and getting really angry and defensive. I was furious and also really embarrassed because I was kind of embarrassed that I had complained, you know, because whilst I didn't feel there was anything that wrong with it, I thought, why am I writing? Well, I was talking to strangers about this and grumbling about, you know, trivial affairs online. It's kind of pointless, but people didn't need to be as mean as they were. It was crazy, like insulting my sort of masculinity and just personhood in general and stuff. And it was quite intense. And I found that very like, because it's a local group, I was like, oh, it's just like, you find often with these groups, there's people who know you and you don't know that they know you. They'll be like, oh, you're the guy from the thing. And you're like, oh, I really don't want to be like known on the internet. And I just like in that way, you know, like, and the groups could get very very nasty sometimes. Like in that case, well, people were out of order definitely, but I can understand, like, I sort of open myself up to it, but there's stuff I see on there where it's just ridiculous, like how mean they are to people. It's horrible. It's honestly crazy. And if anything is perceived as even a slight criticism towards the place, it's like everyone just rounds them. They're all desperate to show that they're like Samuel L. Jackson's character in Django, you know. There's a sort of self-hating thing, and they're desperate to show that they're like superior expats and that they don't complain about anything. And it doesn't make any sense, because it's like, well, okay, so what if someone committed a severe crime against you and the police just refuse to come? Would you just say, that's fine, that's good, I'm happy? Like if an ambulance didn't come when you had a heart attack, you could complain, right? It doesn't mean you're complaining about the country. It doesn't mean you're not being a grateful immigrant. You know, it just means that you're complaining about a particular thing. So they're a bit confused on there anyway, and they're very toxic, those groups. And there's a certain crowd who are on there all the time. And if you're watching this video and you're learning to drive in Spain, you are quite likely, you know, an expat as well. And if you've been on any of these Facebook groups, you might know, like, some of them have an okay vibe and some of these groups are just downright horrible. Like, there's bullying, it's like being at school, and yeah, anyway, besides the point again, sorry, I'm waffling. So I went for the exam after that embarrassing incident on Facebook. And I've since begun just I love the anonymous post feature whenever, because even if you ask a simple question, honestly, you want to ask it, there's times I'd make a post and I'd go, there's no way that anyone could be a dick about this post, but they're somehow going to, you know? I'll be like, you know, does anyone know a place that sells whatever? And someone will insult you. Someone will attack you. Someone will be like, oh, it's not good enough, is it? The food you have at your local shop. And it's like, you know, I've just come on here to ask a question, to ask for some advice. I don't really want to, like, you know, it's just crazy. It's absolutely mental, to be honest. You'd be shocked at what they'll attack people for on these groups. They're like rabid dogs. But I didn't see it. I took it to heart, you know, and now I wouldn't, and I just post anonymously, which is lovely. So anyway, yeah, I did the theory. It was at like 9 a.m. You go there. You can do it in English, which is kind of weird to me, but I guess it's like a global language. So yeah, but I mean, I'm glad that was made available to me. I don't really know if it should be. I guess though, people, if they already drive, and it's kind of, I don't know, yeah. But yeah, I'm glad I was able to. Went there, did that. You do it all on like a computer, and it's fine. I got 27 out of 30, which is the minimum score. So if I'd gotten one more answer wrong, I wouldn't have passed. When you sign up for that, you're also signing up for the practical exam, and you get 2 attempts included when you pay for that. So if you pass the theory first time, you have these 2 attempts remaining for the exam, for the practical exam. So that was good. That was useful. I didn't have to, use up 2 of my attempts. I should have studied more for that. I didn't. But anyway, it's funny. I got out after these Indian fellas there who had just done the exam. And I was like, do you think you passed, guys? Do you think you passed? Like, all sort of nervously excited. And they were sort of like, what do you mean? Like, of course we passed. Like as if the idea of even asking whether or not they passed such an easy exam was a stupid question. And I thought, I guess to some people that is a stupid question, because you can just study it until you know all the answers, and there's no reason not to pass, which was obviously what they had done, judging by their response. But for me, it was the skin of my teeth anyway. So I'm just having a little pre-workout drink. The workout will be after the video. I'm not gonna work out at any point in the remaining duration of the video that you're watching, in case that needed clarification. So so did that, passed the theory. Sorry, I'm not telling the story very efficiently. And from there I thought, great, this is going to be so easy. It was very wrong. I was couldn't have been more wrong about it being easy. So I chose a driving school, and I looked at what was available in my area. Now, I lived in a town outside of Valencia where you have to get a train, you have to, walk to the train station, get like a 40-minute train or whatever, or drive there. And I thought, there's a driving school literally down the road, I'll just go there. And I had it in my head before I even began. I was like, that's where I'm going to go, because it's there. And I kept seeing it. It looked nice, and I thought, yeah, I'll go there. It's our local, it's just around the corner. Big mistake. What I didn't account for is that when I did my classes, I would have to go to the driving school, and initially I was doing them in my town, so it was fine. I would go, just walk down the road, literally. It was super convenient, do a 45-minute class, and then that was it, and I'd just go home. But I didn't account for the fact that when we went to Valencia, we would have to drive there, which was a long drive, and so we'd have to double up. I'd have to go with another student, and we would each pay for 2 classes. So you would do the classes in, from what I remember, you would pay for 2 classes. No, sorry, I beg your pardon. You'd pay for, oh God, I can't even remember now. Yeah, they would be in doubles, and you would go with someone else. Or was it? Jesus, I don't even remember. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm drawing a complete blank here. Let me pause and think. Yes, I beg your pardon. Yeah, sorry, they were. So we would each do an hour and a half. We'd each pay for an hour and a half, me and the other student, and then we would drive all the way to the city. I was confused because I didn't do this on my first couple of classes in the city. Those were just my hour and a half. No one else was with us. But then they start like doubling you up. And in fact, I think I only did one in the city without anyone else. So anyway, so it's 3 hours, and you're only driving for half of that, and you're only driving in the city for maybe 45 minutes or something. So I was paying basically, I mean, it was good. I got a lot of motorway driving experience, but that's fairly easy, particularly once you're actually on the motorway. It's kind of getting on and off it that's difficult, and like the slip roads and all these deceleration lanes and all that. Those are difficult, but yeah, most of my time practicing was spent on the motorway, which was a huge waste of time and money, really. I mean, I'm kind of glad, to be honest, because that's the place where if you do have an accident, you're most likely to have a fatal accident. So I'm kind of glad to have had all that practice there, but it didn't help me with the exam. So anyway, so I went to this school to sign up. The classes were, they said like the classes are 45 minutes, but you'll mostly do doubles. They didn't say anything about the 3 hours. They didn't say you're going to be gone for 3 hours. And it seemed like at first they just told me anything to get me through the door, to get me to pay, to get me to buy a bundle of classes. So I did. And they even said, and I didn't expect this. I didn't want this. I wasn't asking for this. But they said you can do the classes in English. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And again, I wouldn't expect anyone to accommodate me in that regard. I speak Spanish, but I was a bit nervous about that because when you're driving, you don't know all the terminology and you're trying to focus on the road. And this was, one of the main obstacles for me, which I'll get onto. But I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then they didn't mention that the classes would be 3 hours because I said it's kind of difficult to fit it in with my job. And they said, don't worry, it's so convenient. We'll fit in whenever, blah, blah, blah. They were really nice. The lady at the desk was like really nice. And of course, it's all just to get you in the door, get you to sign up with them, get you to buy a bundle of classes, which I did. I did a class first. I had my first class. And needless to say, it wasn't in English, right? But we did a test class before I bought the bundle. And I went with a guy, he was about my age, he was like a young guy, and he was very nice and friendly, super easy, super like calm and supportive and everything, because I was like, this is nuts, like we didn't test we didn't start out in like a lot or anything, like an empty space. He just was like, go, just drive onto the road. And to me, that was really weird. To drive for the first time, and I couldn't believe I was allowed on the road. It feels really weird. And yeah, he was nice. It was good. It was a good class. And it was helpful and everything. I was like, cool. Then I went. I was like, yeah, all right. I'd like to start then with this school. He was good, and I assumed he was going to be my teacher, so I bought a bundle of classes. Then I went for the next class, and I had a different teacher, and he was a middle-aged bloke, and he was super aggressive. And like getting really angry with me about everything, and like sort of like stopping to bollock me, and stuff like that, like making me pull over so he could like bollock me. And I was thinking, man, I'm paying you to teach me, I'm sorry, I don't know how to drive. And that was the feeling I had throughout this experience with these people, was like, I don't know how to drive. I'm paying you to teach me how to drive. Like, I'm sorry I don't know. I'm sorry I'm not a good driver in my second class. And yeah, when I looked this school up, they had an okay rating on Google, but they did not have many reviews. They had like 25 reviews or something, which is a very, very small amount. And I think they had 1 2-star review, and it was a 1-star review. And it had quite a lot of thumbs up, which I didn't look at the time. A lot of people agreed with the review. And the guy said, like, they lie to you, they trick you, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, it's one bloke. They've got more reviews than the other schools in the area. They seem to be the one to go to. The lady at the desk was nice. I think maybe he just had a bad experience, whatever. I should not have signed up with them. I should have read that review. I think that review brought it down to like a 4.8 or something. And I should have found one that had, a better score and more reviews elsewhere, even if it meant getting the train to the city, which is what I should have done. I should have gotten the train to Valencia, and then it would have been fine, because I wouldn't be paying for I would have been paid for the train ticket, and that's it. I'd get a rail card anyway, and then the extra time is not important, because when I got there, I would have spent the entire time in the exam zone, and I would have had my pick of so many different schools with much better reputations and reviews, but I didn't. Anyway, I chose a shitty, low-rent local school. And the thing is, as well, with a small town, they're less likely to get bad reviews. People don't like to leave bad reviews in small towns. People accept crappy service because they know the people. They all fucking know each other. Every time someone got in for a class, they were like, oh, so-and-so, how's your parents? Did you enjoy the party last week? It was all this. So they're not going to leave a bad review if they have a bad experience, because they fucking know the guy. So, that was a mistake. Anyway, and I realised that, I was beginning to realise that in the second class, this guy was like really bollocking me, and it was annoying me. And also, it's a lot harder to speak a foreign language when you're in that situation, when you're stressed, and you can so quickly ask a question in English. I can be driving, looking at the road, and I can go, okay, do I have to take my foot off the pedal before I do the, and they'll go, no, you don't, just do it like this or whatever. And you can bet, you don't even have to finish the sentence when it's in your own language. When it's in a second language, I'm like, man, I'm looking at the road and I'm like scared I'm going to crash, and I'm like, don't want to, you know, and I'm like trying to like manage everything, and I'm like, tengo que hacer, and just like getting super nervous, you know. And when I would ask stuff, they would always go, any question, just, you know, they would say this in Spanish, but they would say, any question, just ask me. You know, if you want to know something, just ask me. And then I would ask them and they'd be like really annoyed. And the whole thing was becoming, from the second class onwards, I started to realise, like, oh, this is, you know, whatever. And then got back, and my third class, I think, they texted me beforehand and they said, your instructor wants you to go on the motorway. And I was like, what the fuck? I've done 2 classes and he's bollocking me already. And I felt it was really weird to go on the motorway already. To be honest, in hindsight, it was all right. But I said, are you sure? Like, because I feel a bit weird to go on the motorway. And my girlfriend was like really worried about it. And she really didn't want me to. She was very scared of me doing, you know, because like we don't have a lot of other family, you know, we're very dependent on one another. In particular, she's very dependent on me in that regard. So, you know, and we just love each other. So she was very scared that I would have like an accident or something throughout this whole process. And which is, yeah, I would be, if I heard she was going to drive on the motorway after 2 lessons, I would have been a bit concerned. But it's pretty easy, honestly, on the motorway, like it is, and they do it all the time. Like, and you know, it's not like driving instructors, as far as I'm aware, have like a particularly high rate of auto-vehicular death or something, so I think it's fine. But anyway, I had a bit of a back and forth on WhatsApp with them about that, and they were very hostile about it, basically, which again, it was all just feeling a bit like, oh, fucking hell, I'm giving you hundreds of euros, you know, paying for sign-up fees, paying for bundles of classes, etc. And I think they were annoyed that I didn't pay to do the theory with them. They were annoyed that I did the theory independently. You know, it was all a shitty vibe, really, as soon as I got started with them. And so, I went on the motorway, and that was all right. You know, I kind of enjoyed it, actually. Found that kind of fun. But the classes just continued to be incredibly stressful, and to organise it was ridiculously difficult. Like, they would just say, on a Friday, they would go, next Wednesday, 5 p.m. On the Friday before, you know, and it'd be like, I can't do that, I've got work. And then sometimes they would say, Tuesday, 6 a.m. I was like, I can't fucking come at 6 a.m. I'm just not coming at 6 a.m. And they would get really weird about it. And I was like, you can't tell me 4 days beforehand I have to come at 6 a.m. for a class. And it was a nightmare to organise it with them. It was like really unpleasant and difficult. They didn't try to be accommodating at all, and they were very. What they never explained to me. They never said, "Well, just give us your availability." And after a while, I just started doing that. They never explained this to me, because and this happened a lot with them. They would prefer to argue with you. And be like, well, I'm not budging. I'm not, you know, this is the appointment. Then to say, by the way, it would be easier if you gave me your availability. It never occurred to them to say that, or they didn't want to. They preferred to argue. And this happened again with another issue I had with them further down the line. It was really stupid. So anyway, eventually I just started doing that. And then I started keeping particular times and days free, blocking them out of my calendar, and then just telling them I can do it at this time. So then it got a bit easier. But anyway, then I went for one, I don't remember which class this was, but I went with who I now know is the owner of this school, this lady. And she arrived, and I was all, you know, like trying to be like polite little foreigner or whatever, getting ready with like, you know, fucking usted and senora and all this shit, using the usted form. And she just pulls up looking all pissed off. Me and this like teenager are waiting there, and she goes, "Who's first?" Like in Spanish. She didn't sound like that, obviously. And I was like, me. And I went to introduce myself to her, and she just completely ignored me, walked off and got in the car. I was like, fucking hell, like, sorry, what did I do? You know, got in immediately, like, short, snappy, aggressive, hostile for no reason, just belligerent, being like really rude, and everything I did, it was like she was personally offended. You know, it was like, again, I was like, at this point I had like 4 or 5 classes or something, and she started screaming at me, like, and this lady literally, like, I mean, midway through this class, she was honestly like screaming at me really aggressively, and I was like, I said, like, please, you know, I ignored it for a bit, because I'm not someone who, as an adult, would like to back chat to like police or, you know, a teacher. I just kind of go, okay, whatever it is, you know. I don't really want to. I used to be like that, but now I'm the opposite, really. I don't want to do that, and I don't want to get into it, and I kind of think, to some extent, you should kind of just accept leadership. Even people with their bosses a lot, they're like, oh, I don't agree with this, I don't want to do that. It's like, that's your boss. Basically, you know, the company will just lose its structure. If you don't just do what your boss says, the company just loses all structure and hierarchy and leadership. And yeah, they, you know, you can give feedback, but I think to a certain degree, you know, you should just do really what you're told when it's by someone who's in a position of authority or whatever. It depends on the context. I know it's a horrible statement if I'm being too general about it, but I'm talking about when it comes to particularly petty things like this, minor things. Just go, all right, you want me to do it this way, I'll do it this way, whatever. But anyway, she was like really, really shouting at me, and I was trying to drive, and I was very nervous. Valencia is a mad city to drive in, like really, really notoriously difficult. And yeah, she just wouldn't stop. And at one point I was trying to parallel park, and she was screaming because I wasn't using the reference point she was telling me to. I was trying to. I just wasn't getting it, and she wasn't. You know, I couldn't fully understand what she was saying, and I was trying to listen, and I was trying to do it, and she was going. I felt like she was going to like hit me. You know, she was like going berserk, and I was like. Eventually, I said, like, please stop shouting at me because it's going to cause an accident. I said, like, and she said, I'm not shouting. And I said, you are shouting, like, and it's going to cause an accident. I can't concentrate on the road. You need to stop shouting at me, basically. I can't continue like this. And she said, well, you're not listening to me. I said, I'm listening. I'm really trying to listen. Could you just have like a shred of patience? And she was like, I'm the most patient person in the world. I was like, right, okay. And for the rest of the class, she continued shouting at me. So I got back and I texted the people and I was like, I would like to never have a class with her again, please. I'm refusing. And again, the whole process, I tried not to piss these people off because I knew that my fate was in their hands a little bit. But at this point, I was willing to say, I'm not going with her again. And that's it. I will just go with any of the other teachers. So I started going more with the middle-aged guy, and I liked him. He was very hostile and aggressive, but I grew to like him. He was a cool guy. And we developed a kind of a friendly relationship, making jokes and stuff. And on the times when you weren't having to focus on the driving, on the during stretches where there wasn't much, you know, for him to say, or often when we were driving back, it was sometimes quite fun. Like, well, not fun, but it was quite a nice atmosphere. We'd drive back on the motorway at night, and he didn't really have to give any instructions, you know, so we would chat and stuff. And I got to know him a bit, and he was a cool guy. I liked him. And I felt he was pretty funny. He was very funny, actually. And I felt he was a nice person. He could be very hostile and aggressive, but I felt like he was empathetic towards the students, and he just had that mindset. I get probably when he went to school, every teacher was like that, and that would just, when I was in primary school, that was how teachers were. Like when I was in secondary school, or when I was younger, like they just seemed unable to control their anger, and also it was a reflexive thing that they kind of used as a means of controlling the classroom. And nowadays it's like sort of outdated, I guess, but there was, for a long time, that was just normal. When for a while it was that you could hit kids, then it was just that you could scream at them, and now I don't really know what you can do. Just not have control of the classroom unless you're super engaging and you know, beloved by all your students. And that is a big problem in schools now. But anyway, yeah, so he was cool. And I felt he was a bit, sometimes, to be honest, I mean, nothing wrong with it as a job, and I guess they make a decent amount of money, but he was always working, like he was always tired, he was always saying I'm working so many, I work all day and stuff. And he studied psychology. He mentioned he had a degree in psychology, and I thought he'd probably be quite good at that, and maybe that pays more. But I guess I got the feeling he didn't really want to be doing this, and he was kind of angry all the time at having to do this as a job. But anyway, he was cool, yeah. So I kind of, even though I found it quite stressful with him, the younger guy, we did one class, the younger guy who was a lot more calm and didn't shout as much, he was all right. It was a bit weird learning from a guy my age, I guess, as well. I don't know why. I'm more comfortable around someone older, like, most of the time. Particularly if it's like a guy my age. I don't know. It's just sometimes a bit of a weird vibe, to be honest. And then I did one class with the younger guy, and he was on his phone, like, for loads of the class. He just wouldn't stop texting and going on WhatsApp. And I was like, I didn't say I wouldn't go with him again. I just said I want to go with I specifically requested, whenever I booked a class, I said I want to go with this guy, the older guy, because he didn't fucking, text the entire time for the class. He was having his clipboard up, the younger guy, and he was like trying to hide his. I was like, I can see your fucking phone there. Like, you're just texting the entire class. You're not even looking at what's going on. It's super unprofessional and dangerous, because he's got the extra breaks and everything. So the extra breaks. Have you got the extra breaks? Did you remember to bring the extra breaks? The instructor's pedals. So we've got extra breaks. We've got leftovers. Yeah. Fucking was trucking along, and I kept saying, am I ready for the exam? After 10 classes in the city, I would be like, am I ready? Which was really 20. And he'd be like, no. And I really wanted to do the exam, and I kept asking that he would put me forward for the exam. And eventually he did, and he said, I don't think you're ready. And I said, well, can I still do the exam anyway? The first time he said that, I said, fine, I did more classes. And the next time I started to think, he's fucking fleecing me. And I was getting annoyed, because I thought, I like this guy, and I feel we have a good rapport, but I still feel he's ripping me off. And one thing I should note here, which is, again, very, very, very important about choosing a school. The one I ended up going to later, which I'll get onto, which was a much better experience, they were super busy. There was a huge waiting list, and they have there was a huge, they didn't have enough teachers to meet the demand. That's a really good thing. And the area, I ended up doing my exam in Castellón. In the end, the exams, the last 2 that I did, not all of them, the first 4 were in Valencia, 6 in total, in case your maths is extremely poor, in case your maths is as poor as my driving was. It'd be worse, to be fair, if you couldn't add 4 and 2. That would be, yeah. You wouldn't be allowed behind a wheel if you didn't know what 4 plus 2 was. What was I saying? Yeah. This school, though, in the small town, that they weren't like that. They wanted you. They were desperate to have you, which is not a good thing for a driving school. Reason being, they don't want you to go to the exam. And if you do, they don't want you to pass the exam. They want you as their student for as long as humanly possible. They have to, really try and bleed you dry. A super busy school, that's not the case. They have to just maintain their reputation. They have to maintain what they've got going on. And this kind of applies to the exam zone as well. In Castellón, the waiting list is huge, and that's a really good thing, because they're not as desperate to fail people to keep their job. Whereas in Valencia, they have to keep this going. They have to keep, they have to make sure a certain amount of people fail. This is the widely accepted theory anyway. Not that I would dare say this on an expat group, lest I be tarred and feathered digitally. But basically, the fact that, the one in my small town where they weren't busy was a really bad thing. So I started getting paranoid. I was like, this guy's fucking having me on. He's pretending to be chummy with me, and he's like, whatever. And so at first I said yes, and then I listened to him. And then the next time I was like, look, I want to do the exam, and I'm just going to do it. And he was like, fine. And he said, you're not ready, but fine. And I was kind of hurt by it. I was kind of offended. I was like, why would you say that? I'm going to do the exam. Don't tell me I'm not ready, But in retrospect, I don't think there was anything wrong with him saying that. And it was he was correct. But I guess I had, throughout all of this, I felt shame. I felt like, for example, I read that something like 70% of people fail the first time in Spain, something like that. I've read elsewhere over 50%, but I'm sure it's like over 70% because that was what I read originally, and everyone I've ever spoken to failed first time pretty much. So I felt like, well, that's for kids, teenagers do this. If a teenager can do it in 3 attempts, I'm doing it in 1. I'm not going to be, and I would read people online who say I had like 100 classes, and I was like, I'm not one of those people. And I felt like I had to do well at this. Certain things, I feel my self-worth is tied up in them too much probably, and I should have been humble and I should have just accepted it. But I guess because, I haven't succeeded at that many things in my life, but I always like to think that that's in spite of the fact that I'm quite a capable and smart person. So in my mind, this was almost an opportunity. Like I was like, I'm going to do fucking great at this, and people are going to see how great I am. I'm going to tell my family, and I passed first time, and I'm not going to be one of these dickheads that, does it in 6 attempts. And yeah, I felt like it became important to me for my self-esteem. And also I didn't want to spend the money. I'm quite tight. And, as I said, I don't normally have money, so I didn't really want to spend much money on it. So I went for the exam, went for the first one, and got in. I was feeling all right. We were late, and my instructor said, this is a good thing. It's good that we're late because it means we'll have to do the exams a bit quicker. When we were in what I now can see in hindsight, probably of all the zones I did in Valencia, this was the easiest one. I don't remember the name of it, to be honest, but it was an easy zone, very easy. Once you knew the danger areas in this zone, it was very easy. And I was really I was lucky to be given that for the first one. Anyway, the guy turned up. He was quite nice. An old fella, the examiner. And I was super nervous. I mean, like, I went for like 4 pisses, while I was waiting, and I was having my energy drink and my, whatever, all this shit, and trying to make sure I was like really ready. Cold showers and all that, and I was doing a lot of I was really convinced I would pass. I was sort of telling myself I would pass, and I believed it. I believed I would pass. I was really, really confident, but very nervous. It was both, And then I got in and started. It was going all right, but I was just like, just really like feeling it. You feel it very strongly, and I wasn't as nervous in this one as I was in the later ones, but I was like, you can't relax, and I couldn't relax anyway. In a class, I couldn't relax. I didn't have a single relaxed class with this school because every mistake I made, they would sort of like bollock me. Or even when he didn't, my teacher we developed a bit of a better relationship. He was there was a lot of negativity, a lot of frustration, a lot of, you felt he was disapproving of you. So it just wasn't the right way to learn. I don't think that's a good way to learn. And I wasn't at this point a good enough driver to pass, and it's a good job I didn't. But anyway, so I was driving and it was all right, and then I got to I was approaching a intersection, and I had priority, and I stopped, and then a guy, luckily in a van, like waved me on, like, go on, you've got priority, and I didn't know that. I was waiting for him to pass, and I went to go, and then I like stalled the car, and I was like, fuck, I've stalled, and I didn't know what any of the point system, I didn't know how the point system worked. I didn't know that stalling the car is not really a big deal. Depending on where you stall it, it's not that big of a deal. It's fine. But to me, it felt, because of my ignorance of the rules of the road and all of this stuff, this was a very visible thing. When someone stalls a car, even if you're not a driver, you can see it, it's like visible that they've done something wrong. And I felt that's a huge error. I've stalled the car and whatever. And in general, I did a couple of other little things that weren't right. But I think I was actually driving mostly quite well in terms of the exam. I was doing all right. And I think actually I'd only committed like 3 or 4 minors, and you can commit up to 10. 10 is the maximum. I think I committed like 3 or 4. And so I was doing all right. And then he said, right, we're going to park. And they call it doble filo, like, which is in double file, like basically pull up next to, there's like a row of cars parked up, you pull up, you're still in the lane that people drive in, and you pull up and you just stop there. And I just always found it very weird to do this, because you're not meant to do this normally. You're not meant to stop a car in the road and get out. You're meant to park somewhere. And I didn't understand it. And he asked me to do this, and I freaked out, because it was the end of the thing, and I guess he was getting ready to pass me, because I'd barely done anything wrong, actually, in reality. And I don't know. When I think about it now, knowing what I know now, I'm not convinced he was going to actually pass me. But anyway, he asked me to do that, and I panicked, and I was like, I can't stop here. There's like a bus lane. There's cars here. I can't stop in the middle of the road. So I just kept driving, and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just find like a car park or something, and I'm going to park there. And he's just like sat there like, what the fuck is going on? I've asked this guy to park, and he told me again. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to stop. And he's thinking, fucking stop here. I'm asking you to stop, and we're going to change drivers. And so, yeah, it's quite possible, had I just literally stopped, then it would have been fine. What I did instead was I kept driving, and I saw what I thought was, because I was getting nervous. I was like, I've been driving for so long now that this is getting really weird, and I need to park somewhere. And I was looking for like an empty space. And then I saw this lane going up this way, and I was like, great, an entrance to a car park. And then I ended up just driving up like a kind of semi-private road into a school. And as I got there, I saw I was in a school, and then there was like, I don't remember, it was like zigzag lines on the floor or something, and I just got, the more it went on, that I started to really freak, and I was just feeling like my heart was pounding, and I was like, fucking just stop the car. And I just pulled over to the side, I think on like the fucking zigzag paint or whatever, and pulled up, and didn't put the parking brake on, didn't stop the car properly, got out of the car. I didn't even look when I was parking, because I was freaking out so much at this stage. Got out of the car, and the car started rolling. And I was like, oh shit, fuck. So, yeah, needless to say, failed that one. Which was a good thing. Honestly, it worries me a bit to think that I almost passed then, because I wasn't ready. I'm going to actually, I think my results will be online now, so I'm going to quickly pause this and check just to confirm. Nope, still nothing, but I must have passed. Yeah, it'd be crazy. It'd be absolutely tragically cruel if they told me that and then I failed. I'm getting sore from speaking. I don't know why. I'm feeling it in my neck. My speaking posture or whatever must not be very good at the moment. Yeah. So Jesus. Yeah. So I was really disappointed, and I think I had an entitled attitude, and I was like, I felt very, very depressed. I remember feeling really seriously depressed afterwards, and I felt so, I was making excuses. I was saying they never told me about parking like that and this and that, and I just wasn't ready to pass. Yeah, they hadn't really explicitly explained the doble filo thing to me, but like, they just kind of assumed that I knew. I don't know. I don't think that's a huge problem for many students, to be honest. But also, I guess I was always uncomfortable to ask them too many questions. So it's something I probably would have clarified more earlier, but I was expecting to pull up where we began the exam and park there. So, I was really, really depressed, and I realised in hindsight it's kind of funny, because if I'd known it would take me 6 times, well, I guess I would have been even more depressed. But what I mean to say is that in hindsight, it was stupid to have expected, to have cared so much and to have expected I was guaranteed to pass the first time. And but then I also knew the second time would be much more nervy, because if I failed the second time, I'd have to pay to do it again. So anyway, went for the second one. And this time I had to go with this lady, a different lady. And I didn't really get on with her. I found her a bit shitty. Went for the second one, and I got myself really ready. I remember I was I was very, very nervous, waiting for it. I could feel it. And I saw my teacher there. He couldn't take me apparently, because he had to go with like other students. He had 3 other students that were going that day with him. So I had to go with this other lady. And when I did my classes with her, she was also teaching motorcycle students. So I had to be in the car while she's communicating with them via the like Bluetooth thing in the car, and it was really weird and kind of distracting. And also like didn't find out about, normally you alternate during the classes, but I did my whole first part at the beginning of the class. She made me do the whole thing in one go. And then at the end, just after I finished, we found out the zone. So then they got to practice in the zone and I didn't. And I was kind of annoyed. But again, it's these kind of things that, like, you know, whatever, really. I was becoming it was becoming quite hostile between me and the school. And that was probably an example of something where they didn't really do anything wrong, but I was just annoyed. Anyway, before the exam, I asked, I said, what stuff do I bring? And they told me. They said, like, just bring your NIA and your passport. I was like, cool, which is what I brought the first time, but I just wanted to double check. I couldn't remember, you know. And I brought it with me. And I was getting ready. I was really nervous before the exam. And again, like, relatively easy zone. The third and fourth one were much more difficult. This zone was not too bad. And I was feeling ready, getting myself pumped enough. And I remember I managed to get myself really calm. I was really, really focused, and I sort of focused a lot of energy and attention on like calming my body down. And I was getting ready, and I had a huge cold shower that morning. And I got in the car, and I was like, wow, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling calm, honestly. And then he started asking for my documentation, and I gave it to him, and he was like, this isn't enough. And I was like, what do you mean? This is what I brought before. And he was like, no, it's not enough. And I was like, this is what the school told me to bring. He was like, you need your residency card. Or he said something like, do you have something like, and I was like, oh, I've got a residency card. And he was like, do you have it with you? And I was like, no. And then both of them looked at me, my teacher who worked for the school, this lady, and they were like, then why didn't you bring it? And they were like laughing at me, like scoffing. And I was like, they only told me to bring my NIA and my passport. So I just brought those. Like, they didn't tell me to bring my residency card. I didn't bring my wallet with me, you know? I didn't say that. I was just like, oh, whatever, and didn't really say anything. And then he said, I said, is it going to be okay? And he was like, probably. And I started thinking, fuck, I'm going to do the fucking exam. I'm going to fucking pass. And he's going to tell me you didn't have your residency card, so I can't pass you or something. It just became, when you're in that state, anything will set you off, you know? So I'd really calmed myself down. And then immediately, this just put me on a weird one again. And sorry, I'm just having a little bit of CBD. I've gotten really into CBD bud recently. It's nice. It doesn't get you high at all. I mean, you don't get stoned from it, but it's quite pleasing to, well, not to smoke it, to vape it. I was smoking it before, but I bought this nice little vape here. So that immediately just set me off, and I started getting really nervous, and I was like, oh fuck. And then immediately it just kind of put me on a weird one. Beg your pardon, sorry. And I got really nervous, and I was driving, and I could see that he knew I was nervous and didn't like it. And I noticed he kept telling me to do stuff at the last minute, and the exam was going on and I was driving well, and I wasn't making any mistakes, but I was very nervous. I was super, like, you know, intensely focused, and it was quite an easy zone, you know, in retrospect. And we were driving around, and I was thinking, this needs to fucking end now. Come on, wrap it up. You know, this is taking forever. And I was starting to get fatigued mentally. I remember near the end, I was like, oh, this is really taking its time. And I could see he was annoyed. He didn't like, either he just didn't like me, he did for some reason, and didn't want me to pass, or probably he could see I wasn't very comfortable behind the wheel, and he felt, nah, this guy can do a few more exams, because he's clearly not relaxed, you know, which is important. He could see I was a fearful driver. And so he wanted me to fail, but I wasn't making any mistakes. And then he said, I wasn't making enough mistakes. And then we went to go into a roundabout, and he said, what did he say? I think he said right at the last minute, he changed the direction, basically. He didn't say anything, so I just entered the roundabout. No, he told me to go, I don't remember. He gave me an instruction very late, basically, and it was too late, realistically, for me to follow it, so I didn't, and then I tried to explain it, and then I kind of panicked, and I went into the roundabout and stalled because I was trying to talk to him to tell him, I'm sorry I didn't do that, but I didn't have time. And I stalled in the middle of the roundabout and stopped in the roundabout, which is obviously bad, blocking an intersection. So it's a minimum of like 4 points, I think. And carried on, and then immediately I was like, oh, fuck, I've done it now, Because if I'd carried on, I don't think he would have had a valid justification to fail me, to be honest. And carried on and pulled up and everything. Rest of it was all right. And I said, have I passed? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to add everything up, and your teacher will tell you or whatever. And I went and I said to, I forgot to mention, after I failed the first exam, I was really feeling sorry for myself. It was last October. I was really, really feeling sorry for myself. And a few days later, it was our anniversary, me and my girlfriend. And we had our anniversary, and I was still feeling sorry for myself about the exam, and we had been fighting, and she was angry with me, and she was like, sulking with me. So it was a bad atmosphere, really. But we went out and we had, on what was a bad anniversary where we were not happy with each other, we went out and we had a really nice walk with our dog in the mountains, and she used to love to go to the mountains. And we had this amazing walk, and she was chasing a stick and everything and having so much fun, and she was so athletic and everything. The dog, not my girlfriend. She was chasing a stick. She was so, oh God, yeah, I'll never forget how athletic my girlfriend was that day. Chasing the stick. The dog was chasing the stick and everything. And then, I've talked about this previously on the channel. People watching might have seen it, but basically, that night we went to bed and we woke up at like 6 a.m. and we heard this crazy scrabbling noise. I'm telling you a very short version of the story, but basically, woke up in the night, heard this crazy sound, went into the living room, and this is a sound, and went into the living room, and the dog was scrabbling around on her front two paws, completely paralysed in the back half of her body, fully paralysed. Her legs were dead, and that began a huge journey of recovery, which is now, we're coming up to our anniversary, and then the day after that is the anniversary of her injury. We're coming up to that now, and she's finally really getting there. And it's been, to be fair, we've done an amazing job. That's one thing throughout all of this driving bullshit and all the disappointment I felt of that, I've been really proud of what we've done for the dog, because it's been enormously difficult. At the time we were living on the 4th floor with no elevator. And so every time she needed to go to the toilet, she was in the vets for ages, and it looked like she was going to die or never walk again. But in the end, we were able to bring her home. And I'm telling the short version of this in case people have heard it, and also because it's not relevant to learning to drive. But it was a huge thing, and we were having to carry her up and down the stairs, and we were having these awful problems with our neighbours. In fact, the night before I did the first class, when I went on the motorway, the night before that, I was trying to sleep, and we had this huge incident with our neighbours where we had to call the police. I got into a fight with the guy, and we had to call the police and everything, and he went to go get a knife and stuff. They were horrible people, and their kids kept harassing us and banging on our door. And this was the night before the first one in the thingy. So already we didn't like living in this place. Then the dog got injured. So having to carry her up and down 4 flights every time she went to the toilet. And we had to walk her around holding her by a support to hold her back half of her body up, because it was completely dead. It was terrible. It was terribly sad to see her like that. And it was terribly difficult. And we really wanted to move. And we wanted to move to the place where the vet is, which is where we live now. We were really desperate to move here, and we were thinking at the time, I really need a car, because I'm not bringing her in a fucking van with some stranger, and we've got so much stuff to bring. And even leaving her unattended, the first period when she was injured, we had to stay up, we had to sleep in shifts, because she would try and get up in the night and potentially cripple herself again. And so it was like round the clock support and care for her. And we really wanted to move, and we didn't want to move. We thought, if we got a man with a van, we're going to get all the stuff out of the house, and then someone has to sit here with the dog, and it was going to just be such a thing, or we bring the dog in the van, and it was unfathomable because she was in such a fragile state. So I really wanted to pass. So going into the second exam, I was very nervous about this. And yeah, so anyway, was also thinking I really wanted to see my mum, and they were going to be in France during this period, and so I was like really, really, really eager to pass. And I started saying to my temporary new driving instructor, I was hoping she would put a word in. I went and said to her while I was waiting for the results, I said, I'm really nervous, and she was like, yeah, and like just wasn't interested. I later found out the owner was her mum, so I think this is maybe why she didn't like me, because I didn't get on with her mum. I don't know what I did. And she was like, yeah, whatever. And I thought I'll try and give a bit of a sob. And I mentioned about my mum. I said my mum's very ill, and I'm really nervous. I really want to see her this Christmas, and I'm like really scared that I'm not going to be able to, and I'm so stressed about this. And she went, yeah, tranquilo, and like put a hand up to me. Tranquilo is like has a lot of meanings, but can be very dismissive and rude. It's not really exactly the same as telling someone to chill. It can be nice. You can be telling someone don't worry, but it can also be like, yeah, chill, shut up, and that was how she said it. And I was like, wow, that's a way to speak to someone who's telling you something. I wasn't asking. I understand it's my problem. I don't expect people to fucking bend over, but I thought she might go, oh, sorry to hear that. I hope you pass as well. There's nothing we can do or whatever. Or maybe she might think, I'll ask the guy to be a bit fair, be a bit softer on him or whatever, because whatever. I just thought I might as well explain it. And it was basically, the answer was like, fuck off. And she came back, she went to speak to the examiner, she came back and she told the others, she was like, you've passed. And they're like all dancing around and hugging each other. And she came to me and I was like, and she was like, no. And I was like, okay, right. And I was really upset. Again, like just bitterly disappointed. And at that stage, I started to consider doing it in Castillon, because I knew we were going to be moving sooner or later. And I started phoning up driving schools in Castillon, and I didn't really look that hard, but I started phoning up different driving schools, and I was like, hi, I'm thinking, I'm in Valencia, I'm not going to be here that much longer, but and they were saying the waiting list is 3 months for the exam, and we don't have any places available in our school currently. And I kept getting this answer. And I was like, and I'd heard it was easier there, and also I knew we were going to be moving there. And I thought maybe I won't have to have this whole, like drive in and everything. And I made a huge mistake then, because I knew I had to pay to do the exam again, and I would have to pay another 95 euros. I think every time you fail twice, you pay 95 euros. And of course, I'd have to pay for more classes, pay for the teacher to come to the exam with me, but I did anyway. And I fucking what happened? Yeah, and I just thought, fuck it, I'm just going to stay with this school, and I guess when we move, I might have to come back here. Hopefully I'll be done before the time we move. Huge mistake, very stupid decision. And again, if I wasn't rushed, I would have said, I'll just wait. But I thought if I wait and do it in Castillon, I said I'm already with this driving school, and I'm already like on the list, and it's quicker to do it in Valencia. If I go there and move, it's a minimum of 3 months before I can even attempt the exam. And I'll have to have lots of classes in that time to stay fresh. So it seemed logical, but hindsight's 2020. I should have waited until we moved and done it in Castillon. And fuck me, is it easier in Castillon? Jesus. I'd say it's honestly like twice as easy in Castillon than Valencia. If you have the choice between two zones, like again, you have to factor in other factors. But yeah. So then what? So I decided, I said, fuck it, I'll stay with this fucking driving school. I hate them at this point. There've been a lot of other things, but whatever. Like when I was waiting for the second exam, this is a prime example, right? Like I was waiting for the second exam and I was like, do you know roughly how long it will be? And they're like, we don't know. When we know, we'll tell you. It was always like that. And I was like, I know you don't know, but like, could you just, is it, a month, 6 months? Like, can you, I don't have any idea. And it is, a normal person would go, I don't know. I can't tell you the exact date. Usually it's between 2 to 5 weeks or something. Sorry, I don't know. But basically, it won't be that long. It will probably be within the next month, something like that. And again, I said, it's a bit urgent for me. I'm really trying to get the license soon. I'm sorry to ask annoying questions, but can you just give me a rough idea of when my next exam will be? And they just refused, and it's passive aggressive, it's just obnoxious. Like they would go, I don't know when it is, and it's like, I know you don't know. I'm not asking you to tell me the date. I'm asking you to give me an approximate idea, because this is your job and you do it all the time. And if someone you were chatting to in casual conversation asked you this, you would produce this answer. You obviously have an answer, you just don't want to give it to me. So made the probably catastrophic error of signing up to do it again with these lot. Had to go for more classes. Then, in the interim, moved here, which is really far away. So then what I had to start doing, this became insane. This became honestly fucking insane. I had to cycle from where I live to a train station, which is like 40 minutes or more. Get the train. The trains, you can't guarantee they're going to turn up, and you have to get there early, and the timetables change all the time, so wait for the train. Get the train to the town I used to live in, so from the beginning, so cycle to the station, 45 minutes, initially it was longer, through the countryside, through these like dirt roads where the farmers' dogs just live on the road, and used to chase me. When I go through at night, man, I'll get to that, but the dogs were like, those huge farm dogs where they're not a specific breed, they're just tough as nails, and they would chase me and bark at me. I'd be cycling through this, I kept getting punctures and stuff, and having to fix it was just becoming like sort of Bean-esque, not even Bean-esque, I don't even know, Todd Margaret-esque, if anyone knows that, a fairly obscure reference, compared to Bean anyway. It never reached the heights of Bean. I like that he's just Bean now, He was always Mr. Bean, but now he's just Bean. How times have changed, ladies and gentlemen. Bean has not held up very well, I must say. Probably just age. It's not even the times we're living in. It's just my age. I feel like Bean really was a children's show, but it was presented to adults. But when you watch Bean now, it's like, this isn't a show for adults. It's not good at all. It's terrible. It's absolutely abysmal. And also, I mean, what is Bean? You know what I mean? I think we all know what Bean is. Why are we sort of dancing around this? Why are we pretending Bean is just eccentric? Bean is clearly, So anyway, Bean. Why was I talking about Bean? I had to make these crazy journeys. It was, I guess, we decided not, or I decided not Bean-esque. You guys haven't decided any of this. I'm just inflicting all of it on you. But would get to the station 45 minutes or more. Get to the station, wait there, train's fucking late or whatever, sit around for ages. Have to get there early anyway. Then get the train to the town I used to live in. Now this train journey was sometimes about 40 minutes. Then from the town I used to live in, get back on the bike, cycle to the driving school. I couldn't control the times of the trains, so frequently I'd have to go there very early and wait around for half an hour before my class. Get to the driving school, do the 3-hour class where I share it with another student, spend probably 45 minutes at most in the exam zone, depended on the zone and how far into the city it was, drive back on the motorway, cycle back to the train station, hope there's a train soon, wait for the train, get the train, another 40 minutes or so, then cycle another 45 minutes home at this point, in the dark. And I didn't realise until the first time I did it, this country route I used to take through the orange groves and the farms and everything, at night, no lights, pitch black. And I don't have any here to show you, but I only had a couple of these on my, just wrapped around my fucking thing, and €1 little lights that are you just stick them onto the thing. They do nothing. You can't see anything. And I got onto this road, and I had to go through this. You go through this tiny underpass where it's like a real, it's lucky, I'm not really. I don't have to worry about being anyone's type, if you know what I mean, because that's the type that you might worry about being going through a place like this. Because I felt like, Jesus, I wouldn't want to be here as a lady. I wouldn't want to go through this underpass as a young lady. It was like a real. I don't know what the rules are about what you can and can't say on YouTube without your videos being thwarted in the algorithm. But one of those kind of underpasses, one of those kind of alleyways, you wouldn't want to be in alone as a lady. And I went through there, and then I got up to where I needed to go, and it's just not something I have to worry about, you know. I'm not saying no men do. I'm saying probably like slightly cuter men, you know, like slightly younger looking men, probably. I think I'm not really the type of man that would happen to, were it to happen to a man. In prison, sure, you know, probably. But in the outside world, that's something I've really never had to give any thought to whatsoever, which is nice. But that's not to say, you know, that you like being in pitch black, weird, random, dirty underpasses. Anyway, so yeah, got out onto the path I needed to be on to go home through the campo, as they call it here, and pitch black, like fully pitch black, literally no lights, pitch black, and I hadn't accounted for this, and this was the only way I had to get home. So I had to get the light from my phone and hold my phone in my hand the whole time. It was a long journey through this place, and I was there, and literally the dogs were chasing me, and I could only see them through my phone torchlight. And I was on this rickety bike. My bike is like, I can only go in one set of gears. It's not a fixed gear bike. It's just broken. It's the opposite. It's very much not fixed. It's a broken gear bike, and which ironically makes it exactly the same as a fixed gear bike, only perhaps less fashionable in the 2010s. And I had to go on this path holding my flashlight, trying to like look at these dogs like rah, 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 rah. And the thing is, there's the dogs that are behind the fences, and the really savage ones, they are behind the fences because the owners are like, they'll kill someone, you know, they'll probably get into fights with the other farmers because the dog will kill their livestock or whatever. A few times actually I went on this road as well, and I literally had to wait for like a shepherd to herd an entire flock of sheep through the, you know, whatever. And one time he was like, come on, go. And I was like, dude, you've got the entire road filled with sheep. I'm just not really that comfortable going through all of these sheep, and you've got your dogs like hurt. Like I don't know how. I've never on my bicycle navigated a flock of sheep before. It's not something I'm experienced with. Do I just literally do I ring the bell? I didn't have a bell anyway, but anyway. So on this other occasion, anyway, I was going through that, and there's the dogs that are behind the fences, and they're like the worst dogs. And then there's the dogs that are out that are like not as bad, but one of them that was always there was like a retriever-sized dog. You know, she wasn't a retriever, or he wasn't a retriever. I don't know. But whatever. And there were other dogs out in the road. But when it's nighttime and you've only got a torchlight, all the dogs kind of blend into one. The ones behind the fences, you don't know what you're hearing. You're just hearing barking from all around, and they're all concentrated in this one area. I was going through there, it was pitch black, and I was like, Jesus Christ, these dogs are going to fucking kill me. I'm going to fucking die here tonight. I'm going to get eaten to death by dogs. And it was like raining and shit, and I couldn't fucking see a thing. I was just like, man, I want to fucking get home. This is crazy. And you're going around these hugely blind corners, whereas there's not two lanes, you know, it's like through dirt roads and shit and corn everywhere, so like you can't see anything around the corner. And I was thinking a car's gonna fucking come around here and take me out. And I had to keep doing that journey. So that journey a couple of times was about 7 hours to practice in the exam zone for 45 minutes, which is, you know, really bloody something, man, as Jordan Peterson would say there. Really bloody something. My voice is too tired to do Jordan Peterson, but which makes you wonder how he manages to speak in that tonality all the time. You know, it's like, no, it's gone. So had to Had to do that a lot of times. I kept having to, and I was like, I can't really believe what I've gotten myself into, honestly, like with the ridiculousness of this, what I'm now having to do, would take the whole day off. And by the time I get back, I'd be knackered. Couldn't do anything even. Take the whole day off, so that costs a lot of money. Pay for the train, pay for the class, pay to keep fucking failing the exams. And it was getting to a point, I was like, I just can't believe what I've gotten myself into. And I was still stuck with this shitty driving school. And yeah, the language barrier was making it very difficult, and I was just developing like a kind of phobia of driving, I guess. And I would be chilling, doing normal stuff, and I would remember that I had a lesson the next day, and it was just like the blood would drain from my face, and I'd just be like, oh, we'd be having a nice time at home, and I'd be like, I just don't want to fucking go, I really don't want to go. And again, I mean, I have to put it into perspective, it's not like I had to go to war the next day, but it was just a real fucking buzzkill, and it was becoming financially, I'd gone through the money I had, and at this point it was just my earnings, and it was just eating away at my earnings, and it was really hard to pay for it all. And it's been a huge, I don't even want to think about how much it's been. It's been thousands and thousands of euros, and really like eaten into like everything I have. And yeah, so at this stage I was thinking this is really quite fucked, but I had to keep reminding myself of that like it's not that bad in reality. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad, but in terms of as far as like nuisances go, it was pretty bad. It was a pretty huge nuisance. It's quite ridiculous to travel that far for that long to do 45 minutes. I did enjoy going through the campo. Like I did enjoy, I could like sing and stuff to myself. I could put music on my phone on the speaker, not on the headphones, and just like sing. And most of the time no one was there, that was cool. And practice like rapping different songs and singing different songs and stuff. And that was enjoyable. It was a sense of freedom. But anyway, I signed up for the third exam. I was waiting for it, and I felt like I'm getting better now. I feel more experienced. I felt a bit better behind the wheel, even though I was still very uncomfortable. And on the day of the third exam, you go through so many processes, you go through so many mental processes, you go through all of this stuff, and psyching yourself up and talking to you. And before every exam, I was getting all these different strategies. I'd do yoga the day before. The day of the exam, I'd be like, you got this, man, affirmations and like manifestation and stuff. And I'd be like the night before, like up all night, and I remember the night before the third one, having cold showers. Not the night before, sorry. The night before I didn't sleep. I was like up all night, and I got up, I was having a cold shower and like getting ready, meditating loads, and I was feeling ready. I was like, fuck it, I'm fucking ready. I felt confident, and I was like, I'm just going to fucking do it. I'm fucking sick of this bullshit, and I'm going to do it. Go to leave the house. Luckily, check my phone, and the driving school are like, the exam's cancelled. What the fuck are you talking about? The exam's cancelled? And they're like, yeah, the examiner didn't turn up, so the exam's cancelled. And I'm like, well, there's like 50 other examiners there, so they can just do one extra one each, right? And just cover for the, there's like 100 students doing the exam. One examiner's not turned up to examine 4 of them. There's enough teachers there to cover this, enough examiners there to cover this, which obviously there is. Naturally, my school didn't that wasn't their responsibility. But again, it was an example of like a thing where the woman I was speaking to, who I never realised as well, the woman I was speaking to on WhatsApp all the time was the owner, the woman I really hated, who I really think was quite a witch. I didn't realise I was always speaking to her. I thought it was someone else. So anyway, I was speaking to her, and she was like very snappy, like, that's it, it's cancelled, shut up about it kind of thing. And I was like, well, they can't cancel it. I'm ready. I've taken the day off work. I've spent all this time preparing for it. And they were like, that's it, it's cancelled. She was very hostile about it. Then I spoke to my teacher, texted me, and he was much nicer, the middle-aged bloke. He was like, he said, I know it's ridiculous. This is just how it works, which is the right, I understand. Yeah, it wasn't the school's fault, and I wasn't acting as though it was. I was just sort of like in disbelief. But immediately, I guess, like, for him to immediately say, look, I know it's ridiculous. it's not our fault, there's nothing we can do, this is just how it works. Immediately I was like, okay, you know, and like they're the intermediaries, it's their job. It's like, well, you want the money for being the middleman, then also be a middleman. Like, don't be like, I don't fucking know, it's not my responsibility, fuck off. You know, that was the vibe all the time. And as soon as he said that, I was like, okay, all right, it's ridiculous, we're in this together then, you know, you understand it's ridiculous, and therefore I don't need to, you know. So I was like, yeah, okay, all right. It's insane that they're allowed to do this, that they can cancel on the fucking day because the fucking person, it was on a Monday, obviously fucking was on a come down or something, get hung over or something, and just didn't turn up. Told everyone at the last minute. Unbelievable, absolutely disgraceful that they don't have a system in place for absences. Just incredible. So then they said, yeah, the exam's on Thursday. And again, you don't have any choice in the matter. The exam is on Thursday. You're going to fucking come or you failed, you know? I was like, right. And then I said, all right, well, I'll do one more class because it's been a while. So I had to do another class, do that journey again, the 6 or 7 hour trip to do a tiny bit of time in the zone, go back next day, go again to do the exam. Had been practicing the zone on Google Maps the night before, really studying the zone, looking around it. Felt ready. I felt the zone was all right. I felt I knew it quite well. I'd planned out a route in case he asked me to do, you know, autonomous, to go or to drive. They ask you to drive autonomously or they give you directions. And I felt I'd figured out a good route. I'd chosen the right route and I was ready. And then he said just drive autonomously. I was like, great. So I started following my route that I prepared. And then for no reason out of nowhere, he went, turn right now. And I was like, oh, and it was a place I didn't know. I started going down the street. I'm looking around, I'm looking out for signs. We're getting to the end, approaching the junction. And I'm looking out for signs. And I spot the sign is you can only go right. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go right. And I'm like, what the fuck? Loudest sound ever. I look up. Out of nowhere, there's this girl crossing the road at the crossing in front of me. My instructor, who's got the instructor's pedals, has hit his brake. When he does that, it makes this sound. Apologies if that was very loud. That was how it felt for me. Apologies if you were watching this, if you were asleep or something. Don't fall asleep to Big Dome videos. No, do, that's fine. There normally won't be these kinds of noises. Yeah, so I guess I had not, which was really weird. This was the one thing I never did in classes. I never had that problem with pedestrians. That's like, seems to be when I watch videos, the most common cause of failure in the exam is pedestrians not hitting into pedestrians, you don't actually hit into them, but, you know, failing to stop for pedestrians. This girl appeared out of nowhere, man. I don't know. It was like I looked away for a second and she was there. I think it happened to me once in a class. Literally, it had happened to me once. Because I was very cautious of that. I'm super conscientious of, like, I don't want to hit anyone. I don't want to, you know. So I was always really, really cautious about that. It was surreal, to be honest. It was like surreal. And I didn't have any arguments. I was like, she's fucking there. I must not have seen her. But it was like, she was hiding. She just came out of nowhere, to me anyway. That was how it seemed. I guess my awareness was just not what I wasn't super alert that day. Yeah, so I just had to I was like, okay, fucking cool. So we carried on. Obviously I was suspended and he told me to go to this place and he still wanted me to continue because the other girl behind me was going to do her exam, this South African lady who I was chatting to before, and she was very nervous. It was her first exam, and he didn't want to stop there. He wanted to go to the end, so I had to keep driving for a bit. And then he asked me to parallel park, and I just like bean. To be honest, again, full bean. I went full bean on that, and real bean, you know. And it was like no. And then it got to a point. Eventually, he had to go. Just fucking forget it. Stop. Get out of the car. And I was like, I'm sorry. And after that one, I could have no complaints. That was just entirely my fault, and I wasn't ready, and I didn't even know how to fucking park in reverse or parallel park. And then the girl got in to do hers, and she smashed it. Like, she did so well, I couldn't believe it. And I must say, it's very helpful if you go before someone who does really badly. I've found this, it's really helpful. So yeah, she got in, smashed it. She got out and she was nervous and she was like, I'm not sure. I was like, you definitely passed. You absolutely passed. And she was like, do you think you did? I was like, no. Obviously I didn't pass. And I was depressed, and I was a bit annoyed that they cancelled. I was sort of clinging on to that as a bit of an excuse, like I would have passed if I'd gone on that day, but whatever. I mean, you know, who knows what would have happened if they hadn't cancelled it. I still don't feel then I was that comfortable behind the wheel, but I feel like had I passed, say for example they hadn't cancelled the third one and I'd passed, I would, what I really wanted and what I was waiting, I was like, when I get my car, I'm not going to fucking start caning it out on the motorway. I'm not going to start using it every day. I'm going to really, really cautiously get to grips with everything in my local area, having really sensible, safe drives. I'm not reckless at all. So I wasn't thinking, in my mind, to be honest, I was like, I need to just get through the exam and then I can learn to drive, because learning with these people is killing me. Like, it's so slow. They're such bad, ineffective, hostile, aggressive, disrespectful, unprofessional, disorganized teachers that it's just killing me to learn with them. So I really wanted to just blag my way through the exam and then focus on really getting comfortable with driving. But you need to be really, unless you're lucky, you need to be comfortable with driving before you do the exam. So yeah, then I had the fourth one, and by this stage I was like, to be honest, I was kind of thinking I'm not going to pass and I'm just going to wait and start again in Castellón. I was sort of thinking like, I just want to get this one out of the way. And I was even considering not doing a class before the fourth attempt. I just thought I'm just going to use it up, really. I don't know if I could have transferred that attempt to Castellón, but I was like, nah, I'll give it a go. Who knows? There's no pressure, you know? Went for the fourth one. Went with that lady again. And yeah, and I texted the school and I was like, because it had been a while since I'd done an exam, and I was like, just to confirm, what documents do I need to bring? And they were like, whatever you brought in your previous exams. And I was like, well, in my previous exams I brought what you told me and it wasn't enough, and I can't remember. And I could kind of remember, but I was in this stage where I was like, I don't want anything to go wrong here. I just want it in writing. They must have a document that says what they need. I just want to triple check. I was being a bit like OCD about it, but like, I want to triple check I've got everything. I don't want a dumb reason to fail this. I've got everything I think I need, but I'm just going to confirm with them in case I've forgotten some kind of document, you know. And they're like, whatever you brought last time. And I'm like, well, apparently that wasn't enough. Can you just tell me what the requirements are? It is something I would think that you would know, being the driving school. Again, being the intermediaries between me and the examining board, you'd think you might know this. Could you just tell me? And she started like arguing with me. I still have the conversations about it, and I was like, she started like trying to like get into it with me. And I was like, okay, just, if you don't want to tell me, just forget it. And I just put my phone away. I was like, I'm not having a fucking argument. Like, she was sending me these like walls of text. And I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, and she started sending me voice notes, like bitchy, catty voice notes about it, completely uninvited. Just like mental behaviour, you know, really, really, really mental behaviour. And I just said, like, I was just like, if you're not going to tell me, then fine. You know, I'll just bring everything I have. I'll bring the instruction manual for my refrigerator. I'll bring everything in the fucking house that is on paper. And yeah, turn up for the fourth one, and I was thinking, in the back of my mind, I started thinking, well, maybe because I don't care about this one now, and I'm not expecting to pass, maybe this will be the one where I pass. Now, or every time I'd go through all these different things, like, it's fate, you know, third time lucky, and all this bullshit. Oh, you know, the fourth one, because this will be the twisted irony that now that I don't care, this is when I'll pass. There'll be fate, you know, isn't that funny? You know, I kept thinking of all these different, like, sort of fatalistic interpretations of why I would pass this time or what was going to happen, and I don't think you should do that, by the way, because when you think of things like that, you're you're removing your own agency in the situation. You're thinking too much about what's meant to be or what's fate or what, and it's stupid. It's on you. It's it's in your hands. You have to be in control of it, and it should be either I'm prepared and I feel prepared, or I'm not prepared and I don't feel prepared. And I realize in hindsight that the third, all of them actually, but particularly the third and the fourth ones, I remember getting in, feeling all right, and then getting in the car, and it's just like, you just feel it go through your body, this like sudden, it's like an electric sort of pulsation of dread and anxiety and fear, and you can't move. It's like, and it was so weird because I'd feel fine and I'd get in and then just be like, oh my God, like I'd feel my heart pounding, and it's like a disconnect, because in your mind you're like, I don't feel like I'm this afraid, but in my body I was like so nervous and afraid, and I developed a real, not a phobia of driving, but I developed a lot of it used to keep me up at night. Like, I would remember my classes, or I'd remember that I had a class the following week, and there was other really bad stuff going on, but it was just this, I don't know, like, it really, really was unpleasant. And so I would go through all this bullshit in my head about it, but you start to be honest, like, I'm going to talk about this more in another video because it's applicable to other things I've gone through in life, but you get this like stench of failure on you, and you get this feeling you don't know anything. When you fail the exam 3 or 4 times, you don't know, you can't imagine anything else, to be honest. You can't imagine anything else. And I would try to do like affirmations and stuff, but to be honest, if you're not prepared, you're not prepared. It doesn't matter how much you believe or how much the reason I was nervous to begin with, I think, was because deep down I knew I wasn't that prepared, and it wasn't my fault, to be honest. Like, it was mostly, I do genuinely blame the driving school. I'll get on to why I'm kind of objectively right about that, or at least arguably I am sort of, demonstrably right about that. It's not just me being a dick about or trying to blame them. I've looked at it fairly level-headedly, but basically I didn't feel comfortable driving, and that was it. And if you feel ready, it's not about fate, it's not about your belief. It's important to believe, it's important to be confident, it's helpful to be confident, but your confidence should be on the basis of there should be a reason. You have to build up that confidence. It becomes increasingly hard when you fail that many times, and this is why I shouldn't have rushed it, because I got so used to failing and I became so afraid of failing again, and how much it would cost, and the embarrassment and shame and everything else, and having to tell my disappointed family members and stuff. It was just really, it became a very big thing. And that's why you shouldn't do it until you're ready. And then if you fail once, you're like, oh, I'll do it next time, maybe the third time or whatever. But when you start failing 3, 4, 5 times, it becomes really weird, and it's very, very hard to imagine anything else happening. And it's a hard feeling to describe, honestly. I mean, it's been like, there's times when I was like, in my soul, in my gut, like in my heart, whatever you want to call it, I don't believe I will pass. And I know in my head I can rationalize it, and I can say, well, people take 7 or 8 times. My brother passed on his 9th. I knew someone who did it like 15 times, and she had to do like a special type of exam or something in the end. It happens, but I couldn't believe I would ever pass. There was a certain point I was like, I just can't believe I will ever pass. It's just mentally, it's like this mental block. And as I said, I'm going to talk about this in another video because I find it an interesting topic. I see it with, like, if you're any football fans, with Tottenham. I'm not a Tottenham fan, I'm an Arsenal fan, but I find Tottenham an interesting case study. I like observing them like I'm a sort of scientist, like looking at them as if they're sort of lab creatures. This stench of failure that surrounds them, and the feeling of like they don't know what it feels like to win. If they could win the FA Cup, they could probably win the league a few years later, but and I know they won a cup like 18 years ago, something, it was a League Cup or something shit, but generally speaking, it doesn't matter how many Harry Kanes or Sons or Dele Allis or whoever they have, they just can't win anything, and it becomes part of your identity. And for them, it clearly was. I mean, it looked like Harry Kane had maybe brought that to Bayern Munich, but I'm sure they'll win something this year. kind of funny that they didn't in his first year. What a player to have not won anything. Anyway, yeah, one sec, let me pause this in case it's lagging. Hey guys, I just stopped to check if I received my thing. I received my confirmation. Oh man. Jesus Christ. I haven't it's a weird feeling. Oh god, jeez. Anyway, I have to take the dog out. I'm going to finish this video, but I'll add more later if I remember. But I'll explain the other exams. So I went for the fourth one, and I was thinking, fuck it, whatever. Got in, watched the other guy do his, and he was alright. He kind of he fucked up a bit at the beginning, and I can't stress the importance of this enough. He fucked up a bit at the beginning, but then he recovered, and that is so important. If you fuck up early on, don't get funny about it, just carry on. Like, you very likely he got out and he was like in a really bad mood, and he was like, I fucking failed, and he stormed off. He was like a kind of sulky teenager. I'd been chatting to him beforehand, and then he was completely certain he had failed, and then they told him he had passed. So, you know, do not let it get in your head if you make a mistake, basically. Anyway, so I got in after him, and immediately we were approaching the roundabout, and you have these roundabouts in Valencia that have literally 7 lanes in them. Insanity. Approach the roundabout. This is as soon as the thing has started. I'm in the car, and I'm like, it just gets this really weird feeling. It's so self-aware. It's like, you know, when you ever been when you're in a public place, I see it on game shows. I was watching Tenable the other day, and there's this guy on it, and he's doing the thing where, you know, when you stand like a sim, you know, when you're nervous, and normally you just stand, you don't think about it. When you're at home, you're just standing around. And then if you feel like people are watching you, or you're in a situation where you become overly self-aware, you're sort of you stand like an NPC from a game or something, you know, you just you don't know what to do with your hands, and you're everything, normal things become really weird. And I remember it was like that. I was driving down the road and just I'm just driving down the road. I'm just a normal man driving a car. And you know, you're just so aware, and to be honest, waiting to fuck up, you know? I still can't believe I passed. I still can't believe it. Jesus Christ. Fucking hell. Oh. I can't believe it. So anyway, then we get to the roundabout, almost instantly. We get to the roundabout, and he goes, take the third exit or something. And I didn't position myself correctly in the roundabout, and I got really weird. And he gave me an instruction, and for some reason I was like, I can't do that, sorry. And I exited the roundabout. I took the first exit. I don't remember what happened exactly. I had some kind of insane brain fart. This zone, by the way, was really, really difficult. It was a horrible zone. So I had some kind of insane brain fart. And exited the roundabout. Little did I know I was going onto the motorway. So we went onto these roads that lead up to the motorway, you know. As you can see, I don't know the terminology. And I was going, a lot of things happened. Basically, we got on, first I was going way too slow, and I realised, I'm on a road that's meant to be 60 and I'm going at 20. So I started to really speed up. Then we got to a bit where you're meant to slow down. I guess the road, I don't remember if it's the road to come off or onto the motorway. I think I came off the motorway extremely fast. At this point, I knew I'd failed when I'd gone onto the motorway, kind of, but I was trying to tell myself, hey, who knows, you know? Because I forgot about this. I made a friend at the driving school. This was the best thing about this driving school, was I made a friend, this really nice guy from Venezuela, a Christian fella, and I beg your pardon, from Peru, not from Venezuela, and really nice guy. And he and it wasn't just me. He really didn't like the driving school either. He said, this is ridiculous. And he said, if this guy shouts at me again, I'm just telling him I'm not doing any more classes, whatever. And we were both complaining about them a lot. And he started hanging out with us. He's the nicest guy ever, man. I'm gonna see him soon. Really, really, him and his girlfriend, really incredibly nice people. His wife, sorry. And he had the same. He was like, they're ridiculous the way they shout at you and stuff. They're just mental. In his first exam, though, we did them around the same time. The instructor didn't give him any proper instructions. He ended up on the motorway, if I'm totally honest, when I only did one class with this guy. We became friends in this one class. He didn't seem like that good to me at driving, but he passed because. Sorry, I'm losing concentration now a bit. The examiner didn't tell him where to go. He ended up on the motorway, and he said it was really good because he got like stuck. They couldn't get off the motorway, and the whole exam time ran out, and he was just driving in a straight line on the motorway, so he kind of passed by default. And then he got stuck behind something or whatever, so it was like he didn't really have to drive basically in the city at all. He almost immediately went onto the motorway, drove there for ages, and then came off and passed. And so he passed. And so when I did the fourth one and I went onto the motorway, I thought, oh, maybe this is a good thing I'm on the motorway. But then we were exiting the motorway, and I think I was meant to be slowing down to like 40, and I went round a corner really fast, around one of these things at like 80. And that aspect of driving I still find a bit funny, because coming on and off the motorway and stuff like that, because it's a situation where it can be dangerous to go too fast, but it can also be dangerous to go too slow. Whereas like in a city, yeah, it can be dangerous to go too slow, but there's a bit more, you can take your time to be a bit more cautious in the city. On the motorway, getting on and off it, you can't fuck about. You have to know exactly what you're doing. So it's a bit mad. So anyway, went on there and I was like, okay, I'm fairly sure I failed now. I remember literally they were like scared. And he was like, just drive back, please, to where we were. Just follow the signs for Valencia. I was like, yeah, sorry. And he didn't give me any more instructions for the whole exam. And at the end, I was like, I'm really sorry to everyone in the car. The boy had gotten out, the one who thought he'd failed. But to the examiner and to my teacher, I was like, I'm very sorry for what I just did. I'm sorry. It was like really dangerous and really ridiculous. And I'm sorry for putting all of us in danger. And they were like, that's all right. And then my teacher, it was the one I had for 2 of the exams. She wasn't really my teacher, but I had her for these exams. She was like, I was scared, to be honest. Like, it was kind of scary to be in the car. She was joking about it, but she was like, that was scary. Like, what you were doing was absolutely insane. And it was insane. And I was like, I'm really sorry. And, I got out and I said to her, look, I wasn't really, I shouldn't have even bothered coming to this exam. I should have just like, I'm going to start again. I need to like do more classes and get comfortable and start again. And so, I got out and I was like, look, thanks and whatever, but I'm finished. The funniest thing, not probably just to me, but I told you about, right, when I had this argument with her about that, when the woman on the thing wouldn't tell me what documents to bring. And that was this woman's mum. It would be easier if I said their names. I don't know, I'm too protective over people's identities. It's unnecessary. But this woman's mum was the one who I always had problems with, and I would speak to on WhatsApp. And when I got there, she was like, her daughter was there, who wanted doing the exam with me. And she was like, do you have all your documents? And I was like, yeah. And then she started trying to start the argument with me again, like on behalf of her mum. And she was like, it's just that we don't know, what and I was like, please, like, I can't talk about this anymore. I've got my documents, just forget it. It was ridiculous. And not a problem with any other driving school, by the way. I've asked around. So yeah, she was a bit ridiculous. I also forgot, sorry, it's a very disjointed, probably not a very interesting video, but when I failed the second exam, it was with this woman, the owner's daughter. I failed the second exam with the owner's daughter, and I was really depressed. And then I've been doing semen retention, and I remember after that exam, I felt kind of euphoric. I think, to be honest, sometimes what would happen, and I want to get into this more, I'll talk about a video about failure in general, like, because I've been thinking about it a lot, but I think what would happen sometimes is I'd kind of be happy it was a relief to fail sometimes. It was familiar, and I'm very, very accustomed to it, and I have means of dealing with it, and it can be motivating and inspiring, and it did, throughout this process, it did motivate me to do a lot of things in other areas of my life, to try and improve other things that I could control more easily. And after the second exam, I remember I was like oddly euphoric, and I was doing semen retention, and I decided I'm going to go out and do a workout. And I went to the calisthenics park. That town had the best calisthenics park ever, man. It even had gymnastics rings like in the structures. It was so good. It was amazing. I really miss it. And I went there and I was doing my workout, and then she was there, the owner's daughter. I was walking through, it was dark, and I was walking through a thing, and I was like, right, a bunch of people here, I'm just go and do my workout and get all my fucking feelings out, you know. And I heard her, and she was like, Kieran, and I was like, who the fuck is this? I don't know anyone. Who is this? You know. And then I looked round, and it was her, and she was there with her boyfriend. I was like, I can't fucking escape these people. You know, I'd already gone that night to pay for my thing and everything, and I was like, I can't fucking escape them. She was there, and I did my workout and whatever, and I did some. I made sure to sort of performatively do some muscle ups and stuff like that. You know, I'll work on like, you know, I'll really work on my sort of technique and actual training later. Because I'm that insecure, and it's just nice. It's one of the nice things about doing like when there's someone else in the park, you know, even in your mind, you're like, oh, I don't care what people think of me, but then you're like, I'm still going to like performatively do muscle ups. Or for example, I might normally do like pyramid sets at home where I do 2, then 4, then 8, and then work my way up. But I'm not doing a set of 2 in front of a person, you know, which is pathetic actually. But I'm not going to work this hard to get good at calisthenics and then in front of someone do like 2, you know, as a part of a specific exercise. I'll just do 20 or whatever. So anyway, stupid. Back to, after the 4th one, I was like, look, I'm finished now with the driving school. Thank you. Sorry about that dangerous incident, and I'm going to move now and start again. And because she was saying you need a lot more classes based on that, and I was like, I know, you're right, I do. And now it's about 6:30 here. I'm going to go and take the dog out and then finish this video while dinner's on. But I mean, you won't know. It's like the if any of you have seen the show Severance, it's a bit like the show Severance for you, because as far as you're concerned, no time has passed. That's not a spoiler, that's just the fundamental. Watch Severance if you haven't seen it. It's a good show, and that's really just like the essence of the show. It doesn't really apply to stitching together a video, but in some way it's vaguely applicable. Right, I'm gonna go now. I'll be back in, well, I won't be back in any time for you guys. I'll be back instantly. Hi guys, I'm back. Took the dog out, went to go and get a custom cake designed as well, for someone's birthday. So I did the 4th one, and that happened. And then I started again. I decided to sign up to a new school, and I had to go on a huge waiting list for this school in Castillon. And I don't live in Castillon, I live outside Castillon. Like, it takes me about an hour each way minimum. So I signed up for this school in Castillon because there are some schools locally, but they had bad reviews, and obviously I wasn't going to risk that again. Because if you go to a local school that has like 2 reviews, like, they're just going to hold you there and just drain every bit of blood from you that they can. So I saw there's one in Castillon that has like multiple branches and really, really good reviews, and fairly glowingly positive reviews, and in a sense, most importantly, a huge waiting list. So not just for the exam, but even for the school. But the cool thing is, there's a waiting list for the school for you to begin, but even though the exam waiting list is 3 months, they do it on the basis of who's most ready at that moment. So if you sign up for the school, you wait 3 months to sign up for the school, and then you do your first class. This is what happened to me. I did one class in September. No, I did one class at the end of August, maybe. I don't know. No, I did it in September, yeah. I did my first class in September, and he said, you're ready for the exam this month. And I was like, what the fuck? I was expecting it was going to be a while. I thought they're going to at least want to get like 10 classes out of me. And he said, no, you're ready for the exam this month. And I couldn't believe it. And I thought I would then have to wait 3 months for the exam, but he was like, no, we've got exams coming up, and you can just go on one of those. So amazing, really. So I did my classes with this school, and the first class was really good. Immediately I was like, my God, like, obviously it helps that the zone is easier. The zone is a hell of a lot easier. I mean, the roundabouts in Castellón mostly have 2 lanes, maybe 3, usually 2. In Valencia, as I said, they have up to 7. In general, the cyclists, the pedestrians, it's just a lot less crazy. It's night and day. It's like, to be honest, it's unfair that some people have to take theirs in Valencia and some have to take it in Castellón, and they get the same license, because it's like, it's worlds apart. But also, this instructor was just so much more chilled out and friendly, and it wasn't so... The people are professional, the people behind the desk, they were friendly and polite and chatty, but it wasn't like personal. It didn't feel like you were being sucked into their world, and like, it didn't feel like they were bitter or resentful or they were passive aggressive. It was just like professional, clear, easy, friendly, straightforward. And then in my first class, he was like, "You drive so well." And I was like, it's weird to hear that, to be honest, because I've just had my confidence just beaten into the ground by this other school and by my own failures, you know, and my own, the pressure I put on myself. And I was driving around Castellón for the first few times. It was like a dream. And then, so started getting ready for the exam, did the exam after just a few classes, went for the fifth exam, and got in, waiting for it. And for the first time, I was like, I meditated a bit beforehand and stuff, and I got in and had I got into the car. Another guy went before me. This guy, I don't think he was a local. I think he was Eastern European, but his Spanish was good. It was like better than mine. And he went before me. And it was disastrous. It was shocking. It was, you know what happened as well? And I was a bit annoyed about this. I said on my last class before the 5th exam, I said, "Can you show me all the buttons and shit?" Because I don't know all the buttons, and it's a bit stupid. I should know them, but it's a bit more confusing because they're in like foreign language. So I have to actively memorize the words rather than just, you know, instantaneously memorize them based on the concepts and the sort of, you know, ideas they conjure up in your mind. I had to actually remember the vocabulary as well. And I asked him to show me, and he said, "Arrive before the exam and I'll show you." Got to the exam for the 5th one. I was a lot more like bitter about this before. I don't care now. But I got to the exam and I was there really early waiting around, and then the examiner showed up, and then the examiner and the instructor just started chatting. And I was like, he's fucking said he'd show me the buttons, you know? And they just stood there chatting for like 20 minutes. But in this situation, the examiners have so much power. It's bizarre. They're like the most powerful people. They can do whatever they want. Their job security is immense because there's a huge shortage of them nationwide, and I think they lean into that. They're not exactly unhappy about that. The ones that do the job, you know, they're quite happy that there's a shortage, I think, because their job security is incredible. And they have so much power over you. You want to be so polite. You can never say anything to them. You know, you couldn't go, "Come on, guys, let's get a move on. Chatty, you two." You know, of course, it goes without saying you can't speak to them like that. So I'm just sort of stood there politely, like, "Are they going to fucking show me the buttons?" And then they're like, "Right, we're going," like instantly before the time that we needed to go, that we were supposed to go. So we got in, and I was like, "Oh, fuck it." Anyway, so I watched this guy go first, and he had a fucking mare, like, shocking, to be honest. I mean, absolutely dreadful. He stalled the car like 4 or 5 times. He was just so nervous. I could see him like trembling, and he was really nervous. He was a bit older than me, I think, and I got the feeling a bit like me, where he felt a bit old to be doing it, and he maybe had some pressure to do it, and he was, in a way, you know, I think you feel worse when you're older sometimes doing it, because it's like, when you're a kid, it's like, it doesn't matter. I don't know. There's something that feels more, if you're doing it as an adult, you probably have a reason to do it. When you're doing it as a kid, it's just like, "I want my first car, I can impress my friends," or whatever. And it's like, it's not your money, most likely, if you're a teenager. It's your fucking parents' money. As an adult, you know, I could see in this guy, he had the same kind of pressure that I had, like probably family-related stuff, money-related stuff, work-related stuff. He needed a car. He wasn't just doing it for a laugh, I would assume. So he was really nervous. He was dreadful. And I must admit, it helped watching him. I was like, this must be how that South African lady felt watching me. it was helpful. And I was like, right, don't do that. Do this. Don't do that. Every time he made a mistake, I was like, here's what he should have done. I was thinking, here's what he should have done. Meanwhile, the examiner and my instructor are fucking talking non-stop the entire time at a ridiculously rapid pace, just talking. And which I found to be a bit unprofessional, although I must say it's kind of helpful because you don't feel like you're being silently observed. And for me, it's helpful because I can kind of tune out, because it's my second language. Like, I can kind of understand it, but I can kind of tune it out as well. And so it's just like blabbering in the background, and it made me feel a bit more like on my own, which was kind of good. But anyway, they were talking the whole time, and then there was a fly in the car, and it kept flying into all of our faces, and we all kept trying to, and the guy driving is like, and there's this fly, and I was trying to like kill it and do this, but I didn't want to be weird in front of the examiner to like annoy him or whatever, Anyway, that guy finishes his exam, he pulls up, and it's like shockingly bad. A total disaster. And they said to do the changeover for me to get in. And I was like, can I go for a piss? And they were like, no. And I really needed a piss because I was drinking caffeine before the exam and stuff. And they were like, no. And I was like, all right, fine. Got in. And he asked me, can you show me? I don't remember what button he asked, but he said, can you show me how to do this thing or that thing? And I was like, I didn't learn to drive in this car. I've only done like 2 or 3, well, I guess at this point, like 4 classes in this car. So I don't know. And I looked at my instructor because he said if there's something like this in the exam, he can sort of vouch for me. And I was like, we didn't have time. We were going to do it today, but we didn't have time. And then my instructor just like looked down and like wouldn't look at me. And I was like, oh. And then I was sort of looking back at the 2 of them, and I was like, sorry. So he wrote that down. I was like, okay. But it didn't faze me. I felt really calm and ready. And I got in. I was already in. I carried on. I started driving, and as soon as I started driving, I felt so calm and I felt so good. And I was like, Jesus, this is weird. I don't feel. I felt before this palpable anxiety, and on this occasion, on the 5th exam, I just felt so calm. In comparison, it was a bit of nerves, but like really, I felt very calm. And drove around. I was driving really well, so smoothly, like I couldn't believe how smoothly I was driving. And I didn't feel, normally when you're doing well at something and you're like, oh shit, I'm doing well, and then you immediately start doing badly. It wasn't that. I was just like, I'm in control, like I'm doing this, I'm good at this is fine. I am good at it. When I'm calm, I'm like a pretty good driver, I think, like above average. But obviously the exam results don't suggest that. I have to go and pop the oven on 1 sec. Fuck me, I'll put the oven on. This oven goes up so high. It goes up to like 280 or something. Obviously, if you're American, that sounds, I guess, low. But no, it's crazy. I crank it up to full because I'm used to doing that. And then the chips cook in like 10 minutes. If you're an American, that's even more confusing. Like, cooking chips? What the fuck? Are you fucking kidding me right now? You're literally cooking chips? Yeah, I am fucking kidding you right now. Yeah, we invented them. We get to name them. Stop it. Football. Chips. Grow up. Get a grip. Stop it. Respect the language that was given to you. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, so I was driving. It was so smooth. Everything. And I wasn't really making any mistakes. Like, almost nothing. And then at one point, we were pulling up to a roundabout, and I was about to leave the roundabout, and then this 4x4 came around really fast, and it wasn't indicating, and he was actually going to leave, but the speed of him leaving and the way he was coming around the corner, I was entering the roundabout here, and he was on his left, and he came around so fast that I stopped as I was approaching, and I was like this much over the line. I remember it. I barely went over the line at all, and it wasn't my fault. He was definitely going too fast in the roundabout, and he didn't indicate that he was leaving. So I had to stop for a sec, and then some more cars came around, and they passed me while my nose was out like the tiniest bit into the roundabout. Anyway, carried on, and finished, got back, and he didn't tell me to like parallel park or anything. He told me to just park up. And he starts giving me the things. As I'm pulling in, I'm like, I can't believe it. I've done it. I finally fucking done it. And I should say a bit of context to this. Prior to this exam, the situation with my mum had appeared to have worsened dramatically. And actually, this was a false result. But basically, she had a weird reaction to some medication, and they were like, something really, really, really bad is happening right now, and this is like kind of the worst case scenario type stuff. What's happening? And I was fairly sure it was the medication, but then it got to a point where they were like, no, it's not the medication. It was the medication. It's not the medication, but she has this thing, and basically, time to kind of get comfortable with what's happening, because this is the worst case scenario. And so I was doing the exam in these conditions, and beforehand I thought, because I know this feeling I get is this whole thing is a little bit dodgy, and I'll get into that later, but whatever. And I thought maybe I should tell my instructor this. When he asks, are you ready for the exam? I'll say, yeah, but I'm a bit nervous, because on the day of the exam, we were waiting for some results about this. And we were waiting for my mum's results. And I was going to do the exam and then get the results right after. And I thought maybe I should tell him that, because he might put in a word for me. Anyway, I wish I had. I should have done, to be honest. Well, I don't care that I didn't, because I've passed now, but it would have been better. Anyway, finished the exam, and I was like, passed, obviously. Fucking smashed it. Unbelievable. And I turned around, and he's giving me the list of things, which they do always. They give you a list of all the things you did wrong, and he started explaining them to me. And I was like... And then I noticed his tone was, I was listening. He was speaking incredibly fast. I was understanding some of it. And then I noticed from his tone, I was like, this doesn't sound like I passed. And I said, did I not pass? And he was like, no. And I was like, what the fuck? I couldn't believe it. And I looked at my teacher, and he was like, no. He was like, no, you didn't pass, And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, there's no way I didn't pass. And I just was like, okay, all right, thanks. And I left in disbelief. And I was chatting to the other guy, the guy who went before me, as if sort of like, oh, hey, neither of us passed, eh? And I was thinking, you shouldn't have passed. You were shocking. But anyway, and he was like, oh, it's ridiculous. He did this to me and that to me. And I was thinking, I don't think you can really blame the examiner for your one, but I've been there. I know the feeling when you just want to blame them. And I couldn't believe I hadn't passed. And he said something about security distance, and he said something about blocking the intersection and everything. And I was thinking, the fucking security distance, what's he on about? And I should have argued. I should have said, what do you mean, the security distance? And I should have said, again, if it had been in English, I could have more easily argued. And I could have said, actually, when I entered that roundabout, there was a black 4x4 coming around way too fast, and it wasn't my fault. He was speeding, and this driver's dangerous driving caused me to have to stop suddenly. And I could have maybe argued my case, and I didn't even try. I should have tried. I didn't try. I just accepted it and got out, and I was really dejected and miserable and quite angry. The more I thought about it, the more angry I became. And then I was walking with this guy, and he was like, he said, it's a fucking scam. They always fail 2 out of every 4. And he said, those 2 girls will probably pass now and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I got the result later, and it said that I blocked an intersection twice, which I didn't. It happened once, and it wasn't my fault. And he just put the same error twice. That's 4 points each one. These guys are fucking loud. I don't know if you can hear them. They've moved in recently. They're a fucking nightmare. And he said I'd done it twice. And if it would have been I did 2 minors, and then he put that twice. So that was 8 points. And it should have been, I think I was 11 points, and it's 10 to fail or whatever. So if he had just put that once, which would have been even then a bit strict, then I would have passed. So I felt very strongly that he didn't like the cut of my jib, or he just thought, well, I'm going to fail someone today, and it's going to be him. And many people have suggested to me a sort of racial, xenophobic aspect to this. I never like to assume that, because I know and I see other people do it, other people of other backgrounds and races, and I know it's a slippery slope when you decide that the reason someone has done something to you is racism. Basically, one sec. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, I feel it's something you should reserve judgment on until it's kind of explicit, really. But sometimes, once in a while you do get that feeling a bit, but it's more like if you look at like 50 incidents that you experience, you think, okay, of all of these question mark incidents, some of them probably that was a factor. I don't know which ones, and I could easily be wrong about any given individual instance. It could just be a person just doesn't like the cut of your jib, And I know because I used to think about it a lot, like when I used to have experiences and people would be quite frosty with me, like back when I lived in England. And I used to sometimes think like when someone was rude to me for no reason, I would always think like if I was black, I would really assume that that person hated black people. And actually, I'm the same colour as that person who was just mean for no reason or just hated me for no reason. And I always used to remind myself of that. I used to say, remember this if you ever, because it would be very easy to assume, because people are just dicks and the world can be quite a cold place sometimes, and people can also just make strange decisions and be unfair. And I feel in a way it's a burden. It's a burden people carry when they presuppose that they are a frequent victim of racism or some kind of prejudice, full stop. It can be a more burdensome than the reality of racism itself. So I try to avoid thinking like that. But anyway, it's been suggested to me numerous times, even by my instructor, kind of. I think he was kind of implying that at one stage, which was a bit odd, but I'll get to that. So I did that, and then I got my thing back, and I was like, this is a fucking joke. It was a fucking joke. It absolutely was a joke. I was furious, and I was ranting at my instructor. And I got very angry because I felt, A, he didn't show me all the shit beforehand. He was busy chatting. B, he was chatting a lot during the exam and very chummy with the guy, which I thought was a bit... And C, when I sort of said, well, we didn't have time this morning, he didn't go to his... clearly the guy was his mate. He didn't say, oh, come on, man, don't put that down. Sorry, it's not his fault. He's new to this car. And I felt he could have said something, and he didn't. The guy was older than him, and I felt he was kind of deferring to him a bit. So I was kind of annoyed with him. And I was just sort of unloading a bit. I was like, this is ridiculous. I clearly drove very well. And I said... And then I said, this is really, like, I got this bad news today because after that, I got right after the exam, extremely bad news about my mum, which again turned out to be a false alarm, which was really good. And we're really happy about that. But at the time, I was under the impression I had just received like the worst news you could possibly receive about a loved one, and had to deal with this dickhead examiner giving me a shitty score that I didn't deserve for some reason. So I was fuming, and I was fuming. Also, I felt, well, if I made all these mistakes, I drove like that I thought, where was the instruction? Why didn't you tell me anything? Why didn't you... I was annoyed with him because I thought, every time we do a class, you tell me it's perfect. There's barely any errors. I'm ready for the exam. How were you nodding in agreement when he said I commit so many errors? You talking about security distance and stuff, like safety distance, when it's like I didn't do anything differently at all. It was, in fact, if anything, it was possibly even better than some of my classes, So I was annoyed for a number of reasons with him, and it was a bit weird because I had previously been very happy to be with this school. And anyway, so I mentioned what was going on, which I don't like to do that. I don't normally do that. It's not something I don't overshare at all. Even, in a lot of these, well, I guess in some senses I do, but generally like personal things relating to family and stuff, unless there's a reason to, like, I don't really, I wouldn't normally wave it around like that kind of, but I guess partially I was unloading because I was angry, and partially I thought this might help me for next time because it feels like the odds are stacked against me and that people don't really want me to pass maybe, and that, maybe I should just do everything I can to pass, even if I don't feel hugely comfortable doing that. Anyway, signed up for the 6th exam. That was like a month and a bit later, and got to that today with a bit more practice, and was pretty angry throughout, went to my last 2 lessons, and he said, I can see you're pretty angry about the exam, and I was like, yeah. And also, by this point, to be honest, I had found out that the bad news we had was a false alarm, and so it wasn't as bad, but I wasn't going to say that. So I didn't want to appear too friendly. I'd previously been very friendly and chummy, and I thought, I have to kind of maintain this story a little bit. I can't, say, oh, I've received this horrible news and then be all like jokey. So I was being quite serious. And I was driving so well, like in my classes leading up to the 6th exam, and he was like, "This is mad, like you drive so well." I was like, "I know, what's going on?" And then he was agreeing with me. He said on WhatsApp, he said, "I felt you drove very well in the exam as well." And I was thinking, why didn't you fucking say that to the guy then, you know? And when I went for my next class with him, he was like, I couldn't tell if he was being a bit of a people pleaser. He was trying to please the examiner by agreeing with him, and he was trying to please me by saying, yeah. And I felt a bit like maybe he's the kind of guy who might just say whatever to whoever's there to not piss them off. And he was like, yeah, it's crazy, you know, I don't know what his problem was. You drove so well. And I said, yeah, the thing about the security. And he was like, yeah, I didn't really think that was an error either. And I said, well, he put it twice. And he was like, yeah, I don't know when it happened twice. And then I said, what was the thing about the security distance? And he said, oh, well, he's saying that you went round a corner and there was a woman getting out of her car and you went a bit close. I find that extremely, extremely hard to believe. Like, I mean, I know before I didn't see a pedestrian, but I still find it hard to believe because it's never been an issue that in all my classes that has ever really been flagged to me. I'm generally very, very, even in the exam when the girl appeared, I wasn't anywhere near hitting her. It's just that technically, if they're at a crossing, you have to stop. In reality, in real life, you would drive straight through. The one in the 3rd exam. So yeah, it was hard to believe that I'd done anything to endanger a pedestrian because I've never done that before. Maybe once endangered the other passengers in the car, unfortunately. But anyway, yeah, and he was agreeing with me, and I was thinking a bit like, why are you agreeing with me if you didn't stick up for me at the time? Because I know that is a thing that they can do. I've heard numerous people have said, you know, they quibbled with the guy and whatever. So anyway, did my classes, went for the exam today. The same bloke who fucked up his test when I did my 5th one, the Eastern European guy, he was there. And he'd done another one in between then, and then he was doing one again today, and he was like, oh, my second one was a nightmare and stuff. I was thinking, yeah, not surprised. And then he kept trying to chat to me, and I was trying to focus a bit, and he was nervous, and he kept looking at me and like looking up to see if I was looking at him so he could talk to me, and I was chatting a bit, but to be honest, he was making me nervous because he was like nervous again, and I was feeling pretty good, and I was finding it, as soon as I went and waited with all of the other students, I wasn't feeling great, and I was also struggling with my Spanish a bit because I was a bit like focused and it was all coming out all dodgy, and it was making me feel a bit more uncomfortable. So I was sort of after a while I started trying to avoid conversation with him, and then we got in the exact same order. He went first and I went after him, and he was all right this time. He was better. I saw the guy writing down a lot of stuff, but he was generally better. And then I went in, and the guy was chatting to me. The examiner was quite friendly. He was very friendly. He was a tiny bit towards, maybe a tiny bit like no, he was fine. He was friendly, and very chatty with everyone, and like smiling a lot. So in a way, I was feeling good, but the whole thing, it's just always, I don't know, whatever. And he was chatting and asking about stuff on my passport, you know, because it has stuff written in Gaelic on my passport, and he was chatting about this and stuff, and he was making a pointed effort to be friendly, I felt, and that was cool. But then, I don't know, I got in, and immediately all the weird little things where it's like you don't do the parking brake properly, and then you haven't got your foot on the brake when you do it, and then it comes on again, and then the engine, and you press the button twice, and then you like stall and shit. I was doing a lot of this right at the beginning, and I was like, oh boy, okay, fuck, already I feel weird. And during the other guys one, we went into a zone that was like mostly motorways and on the motorway, and then like sort of other just. It wasn't in the city. We went out to the outskirts of the city in a place I wasn't familiar with at all and was a lot less comfortable in, and I was getting pretty nervous. Oh, and I forgot, it was pissing it down with rain today. So when I cycled in, I was like fucking drenched, and like hugely torrential rain. So it was raining during the exam, not as heavily. And one sec. Sorry, I should have waited probably until after dinner to do this, but I'll be all like fucking tired and shit then. I've got some energy from my my pre-workout cola for the workout that never happened. I have a ridiculously low caffeine tolerance. It's crazy. I feel the caffeine from a can of Coke. Anyway, so yeah, today immediately I started like fucking everything up, just doing weird, dumb little things that normally put their back up a bit, or just it makes you nervous. It makes them immediately skeptical of your abilities. And I was like, oh, fuck. And then we were just doing a weird route in a weird area, kind of a mix of industrial areas and then motorways and stuff. And it was going pretty badly. I wasn't using the clutch smoothly at all. I felt very rigid and kind of jerky. And I was quite unsure, like what the speeds were, where we were, because we kept it would be going from 20 to 60 to 80, the limit in all the different roads we were on, and then a couple of times he gave me instructions and I missed the turnings he was telling me and stuff, and I was not driving smoothly. I felt it was going badly, but in my head I was like, remember that you can still pass, like don't give up mentally, stay focused, like, because you might still pass, don't sort of, it's very important not to do it, because it's like a it's like a football match. Like if you're early on in a football match, a team goes down like 2 goals. It's like, well, you couldn't conceivably score 3 goals. The 2 goals have happened early on, but you can conceivably not concede any more and score 3. It's the same thing. You might make shitloads of errors at the beginning of the exam, but the rest of the exam might have no errors in it. It's just that your errors have come early. So anyway, in my mind, it was going badly though, yeah. And then he was like directing me, and I missed a few of the directions. And we got back to the place where we exit, and he said just drive in. Like, he didn't tell me to do any particular parking maneuver, which I was under the impression they always make you do a parking maneuver. But yeah, anyways, we pulled in, and I was like, well, he didn't tell me to do a parking maneuver, which means I failed. I was falsely under that impression that he would make me like parallel park or something if I had done well enough to pass the exam. So I was like, I failed. And also I felt I'd failed anyway. I was very angry and disappointed with myself. I thought I've driven really badly today and not been smooth, not seemed in control, and just whatever. Pulled in, and he was giving me all the things, and I was listening to all the things I did wrong. Again, to be honest, I couldn't fully understand it, and I was a bit in my own head, and I was understanding, like, I guess most of it, but like kind of like okay, and I was trying to listen, and I knew, I was like, this time thinking, I can't be, this is fully my fault. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, well, is it too late to appeal the 5th exam? Because that I don't believe was my fault, and I felt I could maybe get my instructor's backing. But I was thinking, oh, okay, I'll see it. I think I'm too late to appeal that one, but I'm going to see, because otherwise I'm going to have to fucking pay again, and this is ridiculous and whatever. If you appeal the result, it just means you don't pay to do the exam again. It's not like you appeal it and you pass, but you appeal it and potentially, I don't think this ever really happens, but you don't have to pay for another exam entry. Anyway, sat there listening to him, all like, mournful. And then I said, my last little bit of hope, I said, how many points did I accumulate? And he said, you're inside the limit. And I was like, what? And he said, don't worry, you're inside the limit. And I was like, and then I said, so I've passed? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I've never felt, I was shocked. And I was like, I started to cry. I didn't cry. I didn't actually start to cry, but I was like quivering. I was like, literally, I was like, and I was like, I just like couldn't. I was like a Victorian lady or something, I just couldn't. I was really, really. It blindsided me. It was like the reverse of when in the 5th one when he told me I failed. It was the exact reverse of that. I couldn't believe it, and I was just like, thank you. Well, gracias, but in Spanish. And I was like, thank you. And he was like, you passed, but listen, you need to listen to what I'm saying to you. And I was like, sorry. Yes, sir, I'm listening. I was trying to be all like polite and shit. I was so nervous it was going to be taken away from me, because I had looked at his, I forgot as well, I looked at his piece of paper and he'd written a bunch of shit on there. So I was like, one of those is going to be a 4-pointer, and that means I'm done. There's got to be a 4-pointer on there, surely, because I've fucked up today. I guess what happened is they were all minor errors. So I committed a lot of errors, but you can commit up to 10 minors. So, or I guess up to 9. 9 is the maximum you can commit. So I guess they were just all minors. I think it was like 6 or 7 minor errors. and no major ones, and no suspensions. So I guess that was it. It could be that the guy said to him, look, this guy got fucked on the last one, and like, he's a decent driver, and maybe don't be too hard on him or whatever. I don't know. But I think what it could also be is that my understanding of the point system is not that good. So in my mind, when someone like stalls or something, I'm like, that's it, they fuck the exam, like in my first one, when in reality that's potentially just 1 point. As long as it doesn't cause a huge thing, it's just 1 point. To the things that are visible to me as obvious errors are not necessarily what's visible to them as obvious errors, and aren't really as much what they're looking for. So you can commit a lot of errors, but it doesn't mean that you failed. So I guess there's a reason they're examiners and we're, whatever you call it, participants in the exam. That's not the word, but so I couldn't believe it, and I was saying to my instructor, I was like, so I can't, and he said, yeah, go to the school, give them your photos and stuff, and we'll send you the thing. And I was like, almost didn't want to tell my girlfriend, because I was like, I can't believe I've passed, and I feel there's a mistake here, or there's an error in translation. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't accept it. I truly couldn't accept it. And it was a weird feeling. And I went to the school and I was like, apparently I've passed, I guess, so I need to do some stuff here. And she was like, okay. And she went through it all. And I left just feeling like in disbelief. Went home and I would sometimes just burst out into sort of manic laughter on the cycle ride home, and just disbelief. I'm still in disbelief. And it's been over a year, and so much money and so much mental energy and stress and sort of embarrassment and disappointment and worry, like I'll never do this, I'll never pass. And the main thing above all that changed was basically I just became actually comfortable driving, and there's no substitute for that. And there are different ways of, part of that was the new zone, and part of that was the new school, and part of it was the wheel. I bought the wheel, and just more practice and everything. It just comes with practice. So that is the ultimately, I felt really calm in the fifth one and I failed, and I felt really shaky in this one and I passed. So yeah, the nerves matter. Yeah, your confidence matters. But I think the reason people who are confident do well a lot of the time is because they tend to have a reason to be confident. They're confident because they've practiced a lot. Not everyone, but obviously those things are going to correlate somewhat. So I think the main thing is just to be really ready, and practice a lot. And I do think buying a driving wheel for your computer or Xbox or whatever is a really, really good way to get extra practice in. But also just practice as much as you can. I mean, I don't have anyone's car. It's not like when you're a kid doing it, usually you have like a parent's car and whatever. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, I passed. And I couldn't believe it until I got it on the computer. I've got the result now confirmed, and now I'm like still struggling to process it, which I know is a bit silly to keep saying that, but it really is weird to me, and I'm not accustomed to this feeling. I was joking with my girlfriend earlier. It's like when you're like it's like being a kid and having like whiskey or something for the first time, and you're just like, I don't know, I can't appreciate this flavor. I've never had it before. It's like, I don't know what this feeling is alien to me, in all honesty. So I'm still processing it, but I'm intellectually I'm very happy. Emotionally, I'm just a bit like confused by it, in all honesty. But I'm sure that it is objectively brilliant news, and so good that I don't have to spend any more money on it, and I'm just it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, if you're doing it, hopefully if you see this and maybe get something useful from it before undergoing all of this. And I know I wouldn't have listened that much to other people, because I'm always just like doing what I think is the best thing to do and whatever, and that's a good thing in some ways and a bad thing in others. But if there's anything you can take from this, then I hope so. And if you're in the shit as I was now, just take it from me that I did not believe I would in my body, honestly, in my spirit, there was a part of me that just did not believe I could ever pass. There was a part of me where I was like, well, surely I will, because logically I have to pass at some point. But there was another part of me was like, I cannot do it for whatever reason. I just cannot do this, and I did, and I passed. So I'm delighted about that. Yeah, that's all. I'll probably I'll stop this here for now anyway. But if I remember some more stuff to add that's useful, I'll add that like tomorrow or something. So there might be another bit after this. But if not, then thanks for watching. And otherwise, see you in a second. Yeah, that's it really. There's not really anything in particular to add apart from just to kind of sum up, which I didn't have time to do yesterday. It makes a lot of sense to do everything properly from the beginning, to make sure that you kind of start the process in the correct way, not rushed, and also choose everything very carefully. Choose the location you're going to do the exam in very carefully. Choose the driving school very carefully, and get as much information as you possibly can. Because once you start, it's hard to change things. It's expensive to change schools. You have to pay sign-up fees and stuff, and it's kind of just a bit annoying to do so. There's waiting lists, and then you have to start again with someone who doesn't know your level and whatever. And yeah, when I, if I had known, probably I could have, sorry about that. I could have done the whole thing in, it wouldn't have even taken me that much longer if I just began the whole process if I'd begun the whole process in Castellón instead of even doing any of that in Valencia. I don't know, but certainly I know that there are like there were a lot of options and other ways I could have done things that would have been better. Also, the thing is that when you start, you can't really stop in a way because you've put all this money into it. So when you've already spent money doing the theory test, when you've already paid the sign-up fee for the school, and you've already bought loads of classes and stuff, like, some people said to me, like, why don't you just stop? And I was like, I can't stop, and I know people talk about like the sunk cost fallacy, kind of, but I don't really think that applies here, to be honest, because A, a car is something you can like make money from, and B, if you've already spent, say, like, 4,000 euros on it and haven't passed, it's probably going to be like another 1,000 euros or so to, one sec. Sorry, just seeing what the bloody hell the dog was barking for. Yeah. So I mean, if it's already been like 4,000, it's going to be like another 1,000 to get your license and potentially, to make money from it. Then effectively from that point, you are paying 1,000. There will come a point, when you just, there is potentially a point where it ceases to be worth it. But I would say it would be in very, very, very rare cases where it's worth just giving up altogether, because the once you get to the stage of doing the exam, the cost from that point on is unlikely to be as much as what you've already spent on it. In my case, actually, it probably was about the same, but still, even then, like, ultimately it's been worth it. And if I'd stopped for years and I'd gone to do this again like 5 years later, it would have been like, I would have had to basically start from zero, and it would have just been so much wasted time. And most schools, I was lucky with the second one I went to, most schools are not going to be keen to send you to an exam if you've done like 5 classes with them. So even if you remember everything after a huge break, I will say though, after short breaks, I don't really think you forget. I don't think you get too rusty. If you're at a decent level, and for me, having the wheel helped, the Logitech wheel, because when I was waiting for the 6th exam, it was quite a long break, and I just used that a few times, and that was enough. Like, I did it the night before my first class back. I just spent like probably only 20 minutes, 30 minutes on the wheel. And it was just like reminding my brain, you know, getting that kind of muscle memory back and thinking about driving again in a practical way. So that really helped. And generally, like, I don't think short breaks make that much of a difference, but I think if you were to wait like a year or 2 years, you'd probably forget a lot of it. But yeah, moreover, I mean, you know, obviously the cost becomes, there can eventually come a point where you just can't afford it anymore. And that is another thing I would say is really worth considering up front, is like, can you afford it if it goes wrong? Because in my mind, like I said, I was like, I'll fucking pass first time. I'll probably only need 20 classes. I'm really good at stuff, you know? And arrogantly assumed it would be really easy for me. And that I thought I could do the whole thing for like, I thought I could do the whole thing for, well, when I signed up, I said, because she said 10 classes is 330 euros or something for these 45-minute classes. And I was like, do you reckon I could get it in 10? And she was like, depends on the student. And clearly the answer was no. No one ever does that. You're not going to do it in 10 classes unless you already know how to drive. And but again, you know, she wanted me to sign up. And so I started adding it up, and I was like, right, I buy one batch of classes for 330. I pay for the exam. I was basically hoping I could do the whole thing for like 1,000 euros or less. I don't even want to know how much it's been in reality, but it's not been 1,000 euros or less. That's for fucking sure. And so I hugely underestimated it. So you have to consider that up front. Like, even if you've got a bit of money for it now, consider what would happen if it went horribly wrong and didn't go as planned. Consider, like, could you afford that? And would there be a breaking point, at which point you'd have just, you know, potentially lost all that money? So that's definitely worth considering up front. But otherwise, if you're in the midst of it and can keep going, I would say you should, because you've already begun, and you know, if you have the possibility to get what you're after, then probably you should. Also, I just don't think it's good to give up on things generally. I don't think it's good for you. I don't think it's good for your spirit, you know. For me, like, I don't know, I'm still a little bit unhappy with myself for not doing that well in the final exam, to be honest, like for not driving very smoothly, which is ridiculous. I think that's just my brain trying to find a problem, trying to be like negative about it in some way. Or maybe having difficulty feeling successful or feeling proud of myself or something. I don't know, maybe there's not some deep psychological reason for it. Maybe it is just a fact that my driving was just quite sloppy on that day, and I was a bit, just didn't feel I was driving very smoothly. But that aside, I do feel proud that I didn't give up and that I persevered with it. And you know, you can give up mentally without giving up. You can give up, you know, you can continue doing something whilst having kind of given up. And I had to fight that at times. I had to fight the part of me that was like, fuck it, I'm just going to fucking fail every exam. Fuck these classes, I'm just going to fucking go and be like, yes, and whatever. But then I kept having to remind myself, no, stay focused, because otherwise you're going to be doing this forever if you have that attitude. And like, stay focused. And also, an important thing to remember is like, when you're in a class, you are in a vehicle, you can potentially kill someone or cause an accident, and you know, you have to actually have like a good attitude all the time when you're driving anyway. And obviously people who have licenses, like, they get complacent and they lose that mindset if they ever had it to begin with, and they stop giving a shit about, you know, their own responsibilities as a driver, which are really important. But yeah, just keeping your head in the game anyway and not giving up. It's a good thing to practice, and I feel that throughout this whole thing, which I've found to be, I guess, mostly from a financial point of view, it's the combination of basically doing it with no experience, going to a very bad driving school, doing it in a foreign language, not really having the money to do it, and then moving and having all that travel, doing it far away from the city to begin with anyway, and then moving even further and having to do a ridiculous amount of travel for every class and having to take lots of time off work. And the problem is, as well, is my work is, to me, my day job is kind of secondary to making music and other stuff, including making videos and things like that. And I have a lot of other things that I'm trying to do. So if I'm taking a day off work, it's kind of more than taking a day off work. It's also, if 2 or 3 days a week I'm out of the house for 7 or 8 hours, and then when I get back I'm exhausted. Not only have I lost all the money from not working, but I'm not really able to put much time or energy into things like this that I care about a lot, or music. And so that, plus the cost, plus the sort of aspects that I found kind of humiliating, like not being able to communicate as much as I wanted to, and also finding it a bit demeaning to be doing this, and failing at it and stuff. All of it kind of collected together to just turn it into somewhat of a nightmare for me. I'm glad that I didn't give up. And again, I know I constantly had to remind myself throughout the whole process, get a perspective on it, because it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things. People go through far worse things, but there's an extent to which that helps. There's an extent to which that's useful, but there is an extent to which I think that's sort of just a way of invalidating yourself or others. I think you have to be careful. I find it very useful to apply that in my life, to remember other people suffer in much worse ways than this. And it is good to remember that. It's good to be grateful, but it's important to understand your own feelings as well, and to think it's normal for people to feel shame. We're quite social animals. We're very social animals. So it's normal that shame affects us quite badly, and that I often think a lot of I think some people can be quite happy with not that much stuff, with a materialistically minimal life, but generally things like shame and humiliation or rejection or a lack of love in your life. I'm not equating these things to the driving experience I had. I'm just saying that these social aspects of our minds and everything, they really matter to us. They affect people really deeply. So sometimes things that seem small can actually be very understandably very big problems for us. For example, right, someone who there's people who they have rich parents or a rich friend or a rich for some reason, or maybe they were given money by the state or something, or they for some reason they don't have to do anything, and they have money and they don't have to work, and they just sit around all day, or they don't have anything that they want to do or know what to do or whatever, and people are sort of envious, oh, you don't have to work. And in reality, it should be the opposite, because their life generally, a lot of those people, I think, feel a really deep sense of shame and a lack of self-worth, and they feel quite bad about themselves deep down. And it's kind of a demeaning life that is, when you look at it, is not a life that most people would really want. It's not really a very enviable life, to do nothing. It depends on how you approach it, but most of the time, to do nothing with your time is is very depressing. It makes people very unhappy, and that lack of purpose, even people complain about their jobs all the time, but people who lose their jobs, if you look at areas where there was loads of industry and then they all lost their jobs, and then they were given money by the state, they had money to live, but it's the mental side of it. Then people become drug addicts, or they get into gangs or drinking or whatever, because they just don't have any sense of purpose. And so those types of things really matter to people. How you see yourself in the world, how you see yourself in the eyes of others, and so there were people who who went to war and were traumatized by their experiences, who probably, at least, you know, you could imagine, had maybe happier lives post-war than the people who like shirked the draft and cheated it and, you know, fucking cut their fingers off or pretended to be blind or whatever, or, you know, basically like, you know, deserted or who were cowards who tried to get out of the war. Like, probably their lives were in a different way like absolutely horrible in many cases. Obviously some people came out from the war and they were literally, you know, they were so shell-shocked they couldn't speak and stuff. I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just saying that it goes to show, I guess, that suffering can be quite sort of nuanced, and sometimes thinking of everything, dismissing everything as just a first world problem or whatever, can be maybe make you not take the necessary time to feel what you're feeling and to, you know, understand that it is also valid. But also you don't want to dwell on it too much and feel too sorry for yourself, because that's also a fucking waste of time. So basically, yeah, just a balance. But anyway, that's beside the point. Good luck if you're doing all of this. And yeah, I'm sure there's some stuff I've forgotten. If anyone's planning on attempting this, seeing this video or they're going through it, if you have any questions, I can try to answer them. I'm not, you know, I mean, I'm not an instructor, but there might be some stuff I've forgotten to mention. But yeah, basically, be smart about it and don't make the same mistakes I made, that's for sure. And good luck. Hope you do well. It's pretty tricky. So yeah, best of luck to you. Thanks for watching, guys. Hi guys, I just remembered one other crucial detail I forgot to add. The driving school that I originally signed up for, I went towards the end of my time there. I was thinking, right, I'm going to leave a review, and I wanted to be fair because I liked one or two of the people that worked there, and sometimes they were nice, you know. It was weird. It was like a sort of weird, like abusive relationship, you know, where it's like, he loves me, and like it was like sometimes they were nice to me, and it felt like, you know, they were trying, and then at other times they were so ridiculously unpleasant that it was just, you know, and I wanted, and you know, I did like the one guy who I had as my main teacher. I wouldn't say it was a great experience learning with him, but I just thought he was an alright guy. So I wanted to leave a fair review, but like be honest, because I felt bad for other people that were going to sign up with them, and I wanted to say, like, you know, yeah, not an ideal experience. And I was looking at their reviews again, and they had one review from a guy who was like really seriously pissed off and was basically saying they'd completely scammed him and they'd like just robbed X amount of money from him over some particular thing that happened involving one of his exams or something. And he was steaming. And his review came in, and then another review came in like a few days later, and it was another like 1-star review, and you felt like that was someone he knew. And then over the next week or two, more and more reviews started coming in. And my friend who I met at the school, he left a bad review as well, because he was pissed off with them. And then over like the next few weeks, more and more reviews came in, and it got to a point where their score went down to like a 2.5 or something. And to be honest, I felt kind of bad for them, because whilst I'd had an objectively like horrible experience with them, and was at times I was steaming with how like mean they had been about everything. It was just nasty. There was just no need. Sometimes the way they were, particularly the owner, was just absolutely horrible, and not necessary at all. But I feel like review bombing someone is just kind of wrong. Like, if you have a bad experience at a restaurant or anything, then just leave your review. Your experience was bad. You know, I don't think you should create fake people to back you up. I just think it's wrong. I just think the reviews are there for a reason. Individual reviews, you know, your experience, another person's experience was 5 stars, and that's it. I understand, yeah, if they've really fucked you, like, I understand why someone would do that, and I understand maybe getting your girlfriend or one of your parents or something to leave a review. I get that, but this bloke had gone on like a crusade, and it made me think either he was a psycho or they had really done something quite bad to him and really fucked him over, because he went on like a crusade and he left so many reviews from different accounts, and he was somehow getting like believable accounts, or he was telling everyone he knew in the area, or just everyone he knew in general. He just kept asking people, hey, can you leave a review for this place? And anyway, they ended up getting so many bad reviews, their score went down to like a 2.3 or something, and they ended up taking their whole business off Google, which is a pretty heavy thing to have to do as a business. I'm going to see if they're back on. Oh, my fucking Wi-Fi's down, I can't check it. But yeah, I don't know. I'll check on my mobile data if I've got any access. Our Wi-Fi's been down all day. It's really annoying. Let me see if they've taken it off. But yeah, they had to take it off, which is crazy, because when you consider, you know, that's how I found them. That's how most people will find them. So if they don't have access to that, they're absolutely fucked, basically. No, I'm not going to be able to find it right now. But yeah, they took it down, which was... Oh no, here we go. Okay. They stayed on... so no, their second one, they have two... But no, their other one's open, but that doesn't have any reviews. They've fully... It's gone from Google. That's fucked up, really. I mean, they've had to fully take the business off. There's a part of me is like, well, you know, I find it hard to have that much sympathy because they were so shitty, but that is mental to have to do that. The business must have plummeted, but it was being kind of, I felt like, run into the ground a little bit by the owner, who was just a witch. So yeah, hopefully, you know, the people who work, sometimes you see in an organisation like that, with like Manchester United, for example, and places like that, when things are like bad at the top, it just like it affects everyone, and then there's all these players who've joined Man United who are probably perfectly capable, decent players, and they just become fuckheads. They just become like bad players and bad people, and the attitude problems are just become like endemic, and probably if this business is forced to close down, some of those instructors will just go and work at other places and work in a good culture, a good environment where they're actually pushed to be like professional and stuff, and it'll be good for them. And then hopefully the fucking owner can but she won't learn a lesson from it anyway. She'll just carry on. Anyway, cool. All right, guys. Thanks for watching again, and yeah, hopefully this is the last addendum. I won't keep remembering other things to add.